Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria. She grew up with two brothers, David and Andrew. Those close to her knew she was a special friend, known for her intelligence and thoughtfulness. In 1998, while still in high school, Suzanne met Barry Morphew. After 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry initially pursued a baseball career, signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, after a severe injury cut his sports career short, Barry transitioned into horticulture. Suzanne had 4 years of teaching experience when Barry started his own business, and the company gradually grew over time. The couple had 2 children, Mallorie and Macy. They led an idyllic life in Indiana but faced a setback when Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this challenge, Suzanne successfully battled cancer twice. The family eventually moved to Mayville, Colorado, in 2018 in search of a fresh start and to be near their daughter Mallorie, who was attending Western State University. The Suzanne moved to a beautiful 7-acre property that allowed Barry to pursue his love of hunting. He continued working as a contractor and also became a volunteer fireman. Suzanne, on the other hand, retired from her teaching career and devoted more time to her church and a new hobby, sports mountain biking. To outsiders, the Suzannes seemed like the perfect family. However, but they had their share of problems. These issues were finally revealed on May 10, 2020. Monday, May 10, 2020, was unlike any other Mother's Day celebration at Suzanne's house. While Suzanne was home alone, her husband Barry and their daughters were out. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, about a 3-hour drive from home, and their children went on a camping trip. They all planned to return home in the evening to celebrate Suzanne's special day. However, when Mallorie and Macy messaged their mother to wish her happy Mother's Day, they didn't receive a response. This was unusual because Suzanne was very active on social media. The girls expected her to be checking her phone for updates, especially since a friend's daughter's wedding was taking place and Suzanne would likely want to see photos. After waiting a few hours without hearing back, the girls grew concerned. They asked their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife for help. Around 4 o'clock or 4:30 p.m. that day, Mrs. Ritter visited the Suzanne house and found it empty. She called Barry to explain the situation and he instructed her to look for Suzanne's mountain bike. If the bike was missing, he told her to contact the police. That's exactly what she did, and soon the police arrived at the Suzanne residence. Barry and their daughters returned home, they anxious to know news of Suzanne's whereabouts. A few hours into the search, the police found a crucial clue. Deputies discovered Suzanne's mountain bike in a steep ravine near the home. The location hinted that Suzanne might have been involved in an accident, but the bike and the surrounding area showed no signs of a struggle. Notably, there were no skid marks from the brakes, no damage to the bike despite its fall down the ravine, no bloodstains, and the nearby lawn appeared untouched. This evidence led the deputies to conclude that the bike had been deliberately placed in the ravine. When they shared this information with Barry, his reaction was unusual. As the investigation into his wife's disappearance proceeded, Barry shared many more implausible stories. As the investigation progressed, his behavior made it obvious that he didn't truly care for his wife. This led to unanswered questions and speculation about Suzanne's disappearance, leading many to suspect Barry's involvement. Barry gave details about his mountain lion story in a secretly recorded conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper. Notably, Barry was absent from the search parties for Suzanne, organized by her brother Andrew. Andrew doubts Barry's story and offers another possibility: Suzanne actually went missing on May 9th, not on Mother's Day as Barry claimed. It was also discovered that Suzanne's helmet was found 1 mile from their home, in the same direction Barry's truck had traveled that morning. Investigators initially considered this an odd coincidence, but it became more significant when they discovered it was in the opposite direction of the construction site he was set to visit that day. In his initial interview, Barry said he woke up at 4:30 a.m. to an alarm clock and immediately left for Broomfield. However, telematic data from his Ford truck showed he drove 1 mile west before heading to the construction site. When confronted with this data, Barry explained that he was scouting elk earlier that morning. He then anesthetized them and sold their antlers, which was his habit. However, the officers pointed out a flaw in Barry's story. He couldn't have spotted the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was just waking up. To address this, Barry changed his story, saying he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and got up on his own. When asked about the day of Suzanne's disappearance, Barry described it as one of the best days they had had after a long time. He said that morning, he worked briefly with a coworker in Salida and then returned home early. After that, he went on a hike with Suzanne, followed by a grilled steak dinner and intimacy. Barry stated they went to bed together. However, it is essential to note that Barry is not a reliable source of information. During the police investigation into Barry, it was discovered that he had lied about the whole thing that happened that night. The first signs of deception were uncovered by investigators on May 9, 2020, when they reviewed the telematic data from Barry's vehicle and his phone records. Although Barry had indeed spent the afternoon and evening with Suzanne, the details did not match his initial story. One of the discrepancies occurred between 10:42 and 10:47. According to his phone data, Barry's movements around the property were unusual. When questioned by investigators about this inconsistency, Barry claimed he was probably hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at the time. It was also revealed that Barry had switched his phone to airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it in that mode until 10:17 p.m., which further raised suspicions. Additionally, investigators found evidence that contradicted Barry's claim of having a steak dinner with his wife. They discovered only one dirty dish, suggesting that Barry had eaten alone. As the investigation continued, more unusual occurrences were discovered on their plot of land. The police found additional suspicious details while reviewing the data from later that night. 1 hour after Barry claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife at 8:30 p.m., his car was seen backing up 96 feet from the driveway at 9:30 p.m. This led investigators to speculate that this could be when Barry loaded his wife's body into the truck. If he was indeed guilty. Furthermore, the records showed that between 3:25 and 3:48, the truck door opened and closed over 80 times, which, although indirect, suggested that Barry might be hiding something from the police, causing them must dig deeper into the incident that occurred on May 10th. Investigations involving Barry co-workers revealed that he had no reason to be in Broomfield on the day in question. The contract didn't start until a week later, so there was no project to inspect. Barry initially claimed that his only activities that day involved visiting the Holiday Inn, the work site for an upcoming project, a store for granola and water, and a stop at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his story. The footage showed that Barry disposed of 5 trash bags near the Holiday Inn and McDonald's. This increases suspicion about his actions. When police questioned Barry about the footage of him disposing of trash bags he gave an unusual explanation. He claimed that he wanted to avoid paying for disposal fees so he could clean his car. However, his story fell apart when officers searched his vehicle. Barry's suspicious behavior was further highlighted by a coworker who reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in his hotel room a day after Suzanne disappeared. In addition, investigators found that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times throughout that day. Investigators then delved deeper into Barry and Suzanne's personal lives. Their daughter revealed that her parents' marriage was not as happy as Barry had initially suggested. Text messages on Suzanne's phone confirmed this. Suzanne was deeply unhappy in the marriage and discussed her desire for a divorce, which Barry refused. Suzanne kept a list of grievances in her notes app, detailing a pattern of physical abuse by her husband Barry. She expressed fear of being alone with him and was concerned about his heavy drinking and attempts to take her phone. Suzanne also suspected him of being unfaithful. In an attempt to catch him in the act, she purchased a pen with a hidden recording device, but it ironically captured evidence of her own affair instead. The investigation revealed that Suzanne had been having an affair with a man named Jeff, a high school acquaintance, for about a year and a half, starting in 2018. Although Jeff initially appeared to be a potential suspect, he was later cleared of any involvement in Suzanne's disappearance. However, investigators discovered a note that suggested Barry had found out about the affair and might have accused her of having a boyfriend just 2 days before she went missing. During their search of the Suzanne house, police uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence, including the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the dryer and the spent bullet casing in the bedroom. They also found a large crack in the doorframe and a charred remnant of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. These findings, combined with telematic data, suggested that Barry might have killed Suzanne on May 9, 2020. Phone records from Suzanne's phone supported her initial story. After texting Jeff 53 times and sending a selfie at approximately 2:10 p.m., the phone showed no further activity. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public discovered Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance. This revelation came when police excavated a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job sites, over the course of 2 days. In response, Barry released a video to the public maintaining his innocence. It was not until May 5, 2021, nearly a year into the investigation, that Barry was arrested. While the evidence against him was largely circumstantial, the prosecution felt confident in their case. Due to the inconsistencies in Barry's alibis, his repeated lies, and a clear motive. Barry was charged with multiple crimes, including the first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possessing a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Barry accepted the charges and paid a $600 fine. A preliminary hearing took place in August 2021 to decide if the case should go to trial, at which point most of the case details were made public. The prosecution presented its evidence over 4 days, outlining its theory of the incident. They claimed that on May 9, 2020, Barry killed his wife, dismembered her body in a hotel room, disposed of the tools, and buried her remains in an unmarked grave. However, Barry's defense strongly challenged the prosecution's narrative, pointing out inconsistencies in their story. They cited that cadaver dogs found no signs of human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where he supposedly brought the body. The defense also raised doubts about the dart bullet cover, suggesting it may have been planted. Furthermore, the defense argued that Barry's dart gun was broken at the time, making it impossible for him to use it in the murder. The defense team's apparently piece of evidence was partial DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, which didn't match Barry. What made this discovery significant was that the DNA in her car matched DNA profiles from 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona. This raised doubt about Barry's guilt. However, the CBI investigator in charge of the case was unable to present this crucial evidence earlier because he had to take a leave of absence for military service before. It wasn't until September 7 that the judge decided to move forward with the case, setting Barry's bail at $500,000. He was released from county jail on September 20, 2021. However, in a surprising move, the prosecution filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice. At the time, the The prosecution faced several challenges, including a lack of concrete evidence, as no body had been found. Additionally, the prosecution had missed multiple deadlines, resulting in the exclusion of 14 key witnesses from the trial. Barry was seen leaving the courthouse with his 2 daughters, visibly relieved. Nearly 2 years later, on September 22, 2023, investigators made a breakthrough in the case when they discovered several shallow graves in Moffat, Colorado. Suzanne's remains were identified through dental records and a chemotherapy port, found over 50 miles away from the initial search area. The discovery of Suzanne's body has raised fresh questions about Barry's potential involvement in her murder. Although the charges against him were previously dismissed, the new evidence has led many to wonder if he could still be considered a suspect in the case. Some people question how Barry could have disposed of the body without being in Moffat on May 9th and 10th, suggesting he might have had help. For now, Barry does not appear to be directly involved in where his wife's body was found. The police and district attorney's office continue to investigate the case. The 12th Judicial District's district attorney stated that they cannot comment on the case until more information becomes available. While offering condolences to Suzanne's family, Barry's attorney, Iris E.T. Yen, speculates that Suzanne might have been the victim of a serial killer. After finding her remains in a cemetery, Iris thinks that law enforcement wrongly accused Barry and hopes that they will admit their mistake. Barry has initiated a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and investigators because he was wrongly accused in the disappearance and death of his wife. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of John Parker. John Parker was born in 1970 in Indiana, United States, to a middle-class family and have a brother. From a young age, John had a strong ambition to succeed. He valued being independent and continually sought ways to better himself, as well as looking for opportunities for growth and advancement. After graduating from high school, John began searching for ways to earn money. According to his brother, John's first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant. However, he quit his job soon after, but the exact reason for his departure is unclear. Undeterred, John quickly found a new job that offered more freedom, allowing him to explore and develop his passion for pursuing a career in sales. John started working as a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuum cleaners. Initially, his family teased him, but he soon demonstrated his capabilities to everyone, and he also found his purpose in life. By the end of his first year, John had become one of the company's top salesmen, and he was eager to continue achieving more. John worked extremely long hours, typically between 12 to 16 hours a day. As a result, he became a top sales performer, earning recognition at company meetings. John's success also made him a source of inspiration and guidance for his fellow salespeople. During this time, he met Judy, a 20-year-old woman from a low-income family in Texas. Judy was born in October 1969. She was confident extremely and outgoing. Although John wasn't planning to hire any additional salespeople at the time, but she was able to convince John that she had what it took to achieve great success in sales. Judy's past was marked by significant life events. With her parents' consent, she had gotten married at the age of 14 and had 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks, but it ultimately ended in divorce. When she met John, she was determined to start a new chapter in her life. John decided to give Judy a chance, taking her under his wing as a mentor in vacuum cleaner sales. Not only did Judy prove herself as a valuable member of the sales team, but she also won John's heart. As time passed, they began to date. John's life was thriving, both personally and professionally. He has built a solid reputation for his sales and training abilities, and most importantly, he has the love and support of his wife Judy. John expanded on his experience by starting his own business in Michigan, specializing in selling and servicing Kirby vacuum cleaners. He also offered training sessions for salespeople, sharing his personal secrets and enthusiasm that had made him successful in the industry. John's company quickly rose to the top in the area, and he credited his success to Judy's support. After establishing his career, John and Judy got married in 1992. The couple had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica. As John's business continued to thrive, they relocated to better homes, providing their children with access to excellent schools, luxury cars, and regular vacations. Initially, John had a very good relationship with Judy's stepchildren, Christina and Daniel. Christina was a sweet girl, while Daniel was more energetic and mischievous. The family enjoyed a comfortable life, thanks to John's growing wealth. He openly showcased his success to motivate the young salespeople he trained, demonstrating the potential rewards of hard work and determination. However, as Judy's children entered their teenage years, problems arose. Christina associated with a group of friends who had unhealthy habits, and as a result she started drinking with them. According to some reports, Christina has also used drugs. Meanwhile, Daniel, 13, often appears angry and doesn't seem to fit in with his friends. On one occasion, Daniel took John's car and recklessly drove around the neighborhood with friends, damaging several mailbox posts. The next day, John visited each affected house, compensating the homeowners for the damage, to prevent them from filing a police report about the boys' actions. Around this time, John was also summoned to Daniel's school that the boy had misbehaved and they needed to discuss the issue. John and Judy's relationship became strained after he got into a physical altercation with Daniel. After 9 years together, Judy took her family to Texas to visit her childhood home and meet her brother. During the trip, Judy confided in her brother about her troubled marriage and John's mistreatment of her children. However, the situation was more complex. Judy's older children were misbehaving, and she took their side, which added to the tension. Things escalated when John suspected Judy of having an affair with one of his employees. John installed cameras in the office to gather evidence. When he obtained proof of Judy's infidelity, his life was turned upside down, and his demeanor changed drastically. He began to drink heavily, which led to intense arguments with Judy and rough treatment of their children. One incident involved his daughter Tiffany, who was beaten with a belt for not bringing her homework to school. When her teacher noticed the marks the next day, she reported it to social services. Before they arrived, John warned the 4 kids that if they wanted to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, they should say nothing about the beating. Consequently, Tiffany blamed her stepbrother Daniel. John's bad mood not only affected his family but also his employees and clients, who suffered from his outbursts of rage. To keep Judy away from her lover, John moved the family to an exclusive area in Crown Point, Indiana. Despite his hopes for a fresh start, things did not improve. Judy started to improve her appearance by losing weight and changing her look, while John let himself go, growing his beard, smoking, and wearing only jeans. He became increasingly distracted. The business struggled due to John's condition, nearly going bankrupt and forcing him to sell his boat to stay afloat. Office rumors swirled about Judy's alleged affair with Jeff, John's right-hand man, fueling more arguments. At one point, Judy told John she wanted a divorce, but it wouldn't be straightforward. John felt he had given Judy everything, rescuing her from poverty, accepting her children, and showering her with luxuries. When love turns to resentment, he began cutting off Judy's financial sources. John made it clear that if she left, she would leave with nothing, and he had a secret recording of her infidelity with the office employee. This was the situation at the start of 2003. The tension between John and Judy affected the children, whose behavior worsened. Even Tiffany was grounded during the holidays for starting a fire on school grounds with a friend. The arguments finally ended on Thursday, April 17, 2013, when John and Judy went out to dinner. They were likely looking for a way to resolve issues and reduce the tension between them. After dinner, the couple called home to check on their kids and told them they would be back soon. Then, Christina asked them to stop by the office because she had left a school notebook there. As John and Judy left the restaurant, John decided to bring the leftover dinner to Jeff, who was supposedly working late at the office. John and Judy arrived at the office, located in a deserted industrial area. Just before 10 p.m. John went inside to talk to Jeff, while Judy picked up Christina's notebook and returned to the car. A few minutes later, John came out of the office and opened the rear door on the driver's side of the car to look for something. Suddenly, two loud bangs were heard, and John collapsed on the ground. Judy and Jeff immediately called 911. Police and medical units arrived at the scene within minutes. Unfortunately, John, 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and was pronounced dead at the scene. When questioned by the police, Judy, who was inside the car when the incident happened, was unable to provide much information. Judy said she was sitting in the car when John came out of the office and opened the back door on the driver's side. Immediately, she heard two loud shots. Judy's reaction was to hide behind the seat. When she finally lifted her head, she caught a glimpse of a man in dark clothing running away from the car. Initially, it seemed like a robbery because John's wallet was missing. However, as investigators examined the scene more closely, they began to have doubts. John and Judy hadn't told anyone they would be there, which raised several questions. What were the chances of a random robbery in a deserted industrial are very rare. If the motive had been robbery, it's puzzling that the perpetrator would first kill John and then take his wallet. This is especially confusing since John was visibly wearing a valuable gold Rolex and other easily accessible jewelry. Typically, thieves would thoroughly search the victim's pockets in such situations. The fact that this didn't happen raises more questions than answers. Two bullet casings were found at the scene, which supports Judy's account of hearing two shots. One shot killed John instantly, but there's no official information about the second shot. With many unanswered questions, investigators started work taking a statement from Judy. Judy reported that her husband had argued with an employee from his company prior to the incident and identified the individual. However, she couldn't provide any additional information beyond her initial statement at the scene. Jeff, who was inside the office, also couldn't offer any useful insights, as when he heard the gunshots and went outside, it was all over. Meanwhile, authorities informed Christina, a Parker resident, that her stepfather had passed away. With robbery ruled out as a motive, detectives turned their attention to John's circle of relatives and colleagues. They began with an employee who had allegedly argued with John, but the employee claimed they had resolved their issues amicably and had a verified alibi. The investigation expanded, include John's business partners, employees, competitors, friends, and family. Judy's behavior during the funeral surprised and puzzled many people, as she seemed cheerful and socialized with friends, which was unexpected given the circumstances. Her ex-husband was also seen casually reading a newspaper at the funeral. For days after the murder, police brought in 15-year-old Daniel for questioning because he was accused of hiring gang members to kill his stepfather, John. When questioned, Daniel admitted to paying someone to hurt John, but claimed he only wanted him injured, not killed. The police arrested one of the young men that Daniel had hired, but they were released after their alibi checked out. Daniel was also released after 9 days due to lack of evidence and his status as a minor. Later, it was discovered that John had problems with Judy's children, which led to further investigation into Daniel and raised suspicions about Judy's 17-year-old daughter, Christina. When questioned, Christina denied any involvement, and this lead also went nowhere. However, Investigators were left wondering who was providing the money for these schemes. And they suspected Judy was the source. Further investigation showed that Judy and John's relationship had gotten much worse before he died, and Judy's affair was discovered. However, sources revealed that John had no plans to leave his wife and was trying to save their relationship. Judy's main reason for targeting her husband seemed to be financial gain, as detectives found that John had 2 life insurance policies worth $1 million. After John's death, Judy tried to claim this money, but the insurance company initially refused to pay due to the ongoing investigation. Receiving the insurance money becomes even more complicated when John's father suspects Judy of being involved in his son's death. Despite these leads, the case stalled due to lack of concrete evidence. Over time, the John family household underwent substantial transformations. Judy was rarely at home, as she was busy with her new partner, Jeff, who was John's trusted manager. In Judy's absence, Christina and Daniel took care of Tiffany and Erica. Later, Judy and Jeff moved out of state with Tiffany and Erica, while Daniel went to live with his biological father. Christina, who was pregnant and had a boyfriend, stayed in the house. Although the investigation had stalled, authorities kept the case open, regularly reviewing the files in hopes of finding new leads. Their persistence paid off when they came to question some of Christina and Daniel's classmates. These schoolmates admitted to selling a firearm to Christina and Daniel. This information prompted detectives to investigate a piece of land owned by the family that Christina used for target practice. Upon inspection, several bullet casings were found. Laboratory analysis revealed a crucial clue: the bullet casings matched those from the crime scene where John was killed. In 2007, a colleague who was a narcotics officer provided additional information. The narcotics officer had been tracking Christina's ex-boyfriend, who was involved in a drug case and was arrested, to request a lighter sentence. Christina's former boyfriend revealed a conversation he had with Judy. In this conversation, Judy mentioned that her son Daniel was the one who fired the fatal shot that killed John. When confronted with this new information, 21 years old, Christina, who was linked to the weapon used in the crime, began to cooperate. She admitted to buying the weapon and calling John and Judy on the night of the incident. She had asked them to stop by the office, claiming she needed to pick up forgotten homework. Christina confessed to being part of a plan to kill John, with her brother Daniel designated as the shooter. When Daniel was 19, he was found and arrested in Arizona. Daniel was shown new evidence about the shooting and Christina's statement. He admitted to shooting John, but said his mother, Judy, was the one who planned the whole thing. Daniel said Judy had forged checks from her company to get the $7,500 to hire someone to kill John. However, when the people she hired took the money without doing the job, Judy told them to buy a gun for Daniel to use instead. Daniel also said it was Judy's idea to make up a reason for leaving the house that night by calling about homework. He said he shot John once in the head, and the second shot was an accident that happened while he was looking through John's pockets for his wallet, as his mother had told him to do. Daniel was also told to come back home without telling his younger sisters what had happened. His sister Christina helped by keeping the girls busy watching TV. Daniel said Judy convinced them to commit the crime by telling them they were being abused by John. And Judy promises them a better life with more money and freedom. It was also discovered that Judy had previously attempted to kill her husband. She had tried to poison his food, which resulted in John being briefly hospitalized with what was thought to be food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Christina and Daniel were formally charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina pleaded not guilty to conspiracy and was released on bail. In March 2008, Daniel, then 20 years old, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to kill his stepfather, John. As part of a deal, Daniel agreed to admit his guilt and testify against his mother. The prosecution agreed not to charge him with murder, but he still faced a prison sentence of 20 to 25 years. Daniel claimed that when he was 14, about a year before the incident, his mother and sister asked him to help kill John. His mother gave him and his sister money to buy a pistol, black clothing, gloves, and a mask to wear on the day of the crime. She also instructed him on what to do, including showering after the crime to remove gunpowder residue. Judy took responsibility for disposing of the evidence, including the gun, clothes, and her husband's wallet. In July 2009, 6 years after John's death, Judy turned herself in and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. She admitted to planning, executing, and covering up the crime. The prosecution asked for a sentence of 28 to 35 years in prison. Judy, almost 40, was sentenced to 33 years in late August 2009. Daniel was sentenced to 23 years in September, and Christina received a 5-year sentence in October. Press reports state that Daniel was released from custody in 2017. He then chose to keep a low profile. Christina served 4 years of her sentence and was released in 2013, but she tragically died from a drug overdose. This case was driven by greed. Although Judy was successful, her greater desires led her to terrible crimes. Judy's actions not only destroyed a successful business owner but also had a profound impact on her 4 children. 2 of them ended up in prison, and the younger ones were left without their parents once again. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sumner family. Carol and Reggie Sumner raised in Charleston, South Carolina. They were born in the same year, went to the same school, and were even in the same grade. Over time, their childhood friendship blossomed into a deeper affection. Neither of them recalls exactly when they began to develop romantic feelings for each other, but by the time they were 15 years old in 1959, they were dating. Their friends described them as a beautiful and harmonious couple. Reggie and Carol treasured their memories, keeping photos of their happy times together in their home archives. At the time, it seemed like they had their whole lives ahead of them, and they looked forward to a long and happy future together. Their feelings for each other were strong and mutual, and they were practically inseparable both in and out of school. They even started making plans to get married as soon as they turned 18. With the full support of their parents. In 1962, Reggie and Carol, a young couple, graduated from high school. However, their plans to get married were put on hold when Reggie was drafted into the Army a few months later. They decided to postpone their wedding until Reggie returned from his military service and made a promise to write each other regularly. As time passed, the separation took its toll. Reggie was deployed to Vietnam. Unfortunately, Carol lost contact with him, and she didn't even know if he was still alive. Despite the uncertainty, Carol continued her education and started working at the Charleston Air Force Base. A few years later, Carol got married, but the marriage was short-lived and ended in divorce. They didn't have any children together. In 1975, Carol married again, this time to Richard Alford, and gave birth to their daughter, Rhonda, in 1977. However, this marriage was also troubled, as Richard was abusive and had a drinking problem. The situation became unbearable for Carol, and by the mid-1980s, she couldn't take the abuse anymore. She took her daughter and filed for divorce. However, Richard refused to leave her alone and continued to harass her, trying to ruin her life. In 1987, Richard purchased a handgun and ammunition. After a night of heavy drinking, he went to his ex-wife Carol's home, intending to confront her. When Carol answered the door, their 10-year-old daughter Rhonda was present in the room. However, the presence of his child did not deter Richard, who was intoxicated. He pulled out the gun and shot Carol multiple times in front of Rhonda. Richard then drove to a secluded area, where he fired the remaining bullet into his temple, taking his own life. Carol was fortunate to survive the shooting due to the prompt response of neighbors, who heard the gunshots and Rhonda's cries for help. They called the police and an ambulance, which rushed Carol to the hospital. Carol's condition was critical, and she underwent several complex surgeries and blood transfusions. Although she eventually recovered, she suffered significant injuries, including complete blindness in her right eye and permanent disability. Years later, in the late 1990s, Carol's health began to deteriorate again. She experienced severe pain, weight loss, and weakness. After a thorough examination at the hospital, she received a devastating diagnosis: liver cancer. Tragically, as a result of being severely injured by gunshot wounds, Carol lost her position on an Air Force base. With cancer added to her medical complications, she found that physical strain, prolonged periods on her feet, and any heavy physical exertion exceeded her capability. Given these medical constraints, Carol then decided to re-enter the workforce as a call center operator for a cable television provider within her hometown, Charleston. Reggie was in Vietnam for a long time, and due to the prolonged war, he was severely wounded and nearly lost his leg. He spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, and during this period, his name was mistakenly listed among the dead. As a result, his relatives believed he had passed away. Reggie was fortunate to survive and eventually returned home. However, by then, he had lost touch with his former lover, Carol, who had moved to a different location, got married, and also assumed Reggie had died in the war. Years later, Reggie got married, but his war injuries led to the development of diabetes and other chronic diseases. He was never able to become a father, and eventually, his marriage ended in separation. Since then, he has lived alone. Reggie found work as a laborer at the local railroad and no longer expected any pleasant surprises from life. In the fall of 2000, Carol was having a typical day at work, answering phones and advising customers. When she picked up another call, she was shocked to hear a voice that sent shivers down her spine. It was a voice she knew all too well, her first high school love, Reggie. However, she was hesitant to respond, as she had thought Reggie was dead. After answering the customer's questions, Carol mustered up the courage to say Reggie's full name out loud. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by Reggie's timid question. Carol burst into tears, revealing that she was she he had dated in high school, the one he had once wanted to marry. For several minutes, they both cried, unable to speak. Eventually, they composed themselves and discovered that they still lived in their hometown. They agreed to meet the next evening, reuniting after all these years. The next day, Carol spent hours getting ready for the date, trying on different dresses and perfecting her hair and makeup. As she looked in the mirror, she was reminded that time had changed her. She was no longer the young, vibrant woman Reggie remembered from the past. Still, she was eager to win him over once more. Their meeting was thrilling for both, having spent decades apart, and their conversation was unrelenting as they recounted stories from their lives, both happy and sorrowful, covering their previous marriages. Professional triumphs, struggles, health challenges, and basking in nostalgia as they reflected on their lost romance and first true love for one another. Reggie and Carol were determined to make the most of their reunion after a period of separation. They quickly fell into a routine of spending every day together, and within a couple of weeks, they decided to take the next step by moving in together. Just 5 months later, they got married, and Carol joined her husband in his home in the Riverland Terrace neighborhood. As they settled into family life, they initially resided in their hometown of Charleston, South Carolina. They were deeply in love, happy, and enthusiastic about building a life together. However, they faced some challenges, particularly with their health, as they were both still young but struggling with health issues. One of the neighbors who lived nearby was the Cole family, with whom Reggie had a long-standing acquaintance. The patriarch of the family, Stephen, had experienced firsthand the traumatic effects of the Vietnam War. Sustaining severe wounds during combat had resulted in confinement to a wheelchair for many years. His wife, Natalie, often prioritized her social life, spending time with friends at bars after work, instead of rushing home to take care of her family. As a result, their daughter, Tiffany, found herself frequently neglected and left unattended from a young age. Tiffany's situation improved slightly when she befriended the new neighbors, Reggie and Carol. During this time, Tiffany was still in high school, and the compassionate Carol took an instant liking to she. Carol felt genuine sympathy for Tiffany. For 5 years, Carol did her best to support and care for Tiffany, sometimes sponsoring cozy family meals, buying Tiffany clothes, and sharing enough allowance. Carol treated Tiffany like a daughter, showering her with love, care, and attention. When the Carol and Reggie decided to sell their Chevrolet Lumina minivan in 2004, Tiffany asked to buy it from them on an installment plan, as she desperately needed a car but had no money. They kindly offered to sell it to her for a minimal amount, which they divided into 12 monthly payments. In early 2005, Carol and Reggie made a difficult decision to leave their home and relocate to Florida. Their health had begun to decline significantly, and doctors advised them to move to a warmer climate with ocean access. Since Carol and Reggie were both retired, they decided to make a big change and start over. Carol and Reggie sold their large home in Charleston and bought a new place in Jacksonville, Florida. They also purchased a new Lincoln Town car. They was very happy and settled into their new life, making plans for their future together. Carol would call her adult daughter Rhonda every day to share her thoughts, plans, and daily experiences. However, in June 2005, Rhonda was surprised and concerned when her mother didn't call her as usual. At first, Rhonda tried to brush off her worries, hoping that everything was fine with her parents and that they would call her back soon. But when the next day passed without hearing from them, Rhonda's concern grew. She tried calling her parents' cell phones every 30 minutes, but they were now out of service. She also left messages on their home phone, but none of them were returned. Rhonda set out on a solo road trip to check on her mother and stepfather in another state. After a 5-hour drive, she arrived at their house. What struck her as unusual was the absence of a car in the driveway. Things only got stranger from there. As she approached the front door, she found it slightly ajar, an eerie quietness, and a light on in one of the rooms despite the bright sunlight outside. Rhonda called out for her mother and stepfather Reggie, but received no response. She ventured into the kitchen, where she was greeted by a scene that looked like a sudden and mysterious departure. A table was set for two, with food that appeared to have been left untouched for days. The rest of the house was also in disarray, with belongings scattered about and doors and cupboards left open. Adding to the sense of abandonment and unease, their bedroom showed signs of a thorough search, but it was unclear what the person was looking for or who was responsible. On the bedside table, essential medications were left behind, including her mother's cancer pills, which she took 3 times a day, and Reggie's insulin, which he administered hourly. Notably, their cell phones were completely out of battery, rendering them useless. Rhonda quickly realized that her mother and stepfather were unable to leave their home without their essential medications and cell phones. She immediately contacted the police to report the incident, alerting them to the suspicious individuals. They in the car was quickly added to the wanted list, and all bank cards belonging to Carol and Reggie were frozen. The first few days of the search yielded nothing, with no sign of the imposters or any witnesses. However, on June 12, several developments led the police to close in on the perpetrators. A crucial lead emerged when a man, claiming to be Reggie, contacted one of the banks, complaining that his card was blocked and he was unable to withdraw cash. A bank employee grew suspicious when checking the card information and offered to resolve the issue by visiting a nearby branch, but the caller, Mr. Reggie, hung up. Minutes later, a woman called from the same number, claiming to be Mrs. Carroll, and reported a similar problem with her card being blocked. When the bank asked her to visit a branch in person, she refused, citing health issues, and urgently requested access to her savings. Her request was denied. The bank promptly handed over the call details and recordings to the police. The police investigation continued at the station, where they played the suspicious phone calls for Rhonda. She immediately confirmed that the voices did not belong to her Carol and Reggie. In fact, the voices sounded too young to be them. As a result, the authorities believed that the imposters were likely involved in the Carol and Reggie disappearance, either holding them captive or killing them after extracting information about their bank accounts and cards. The search for the missing couple led to a breakthrough a few days later, when their car was discovered abandoned on a remote road in a wooded area. A thorough examination of the vehicle revealed no signs of blood or struggle in the cabin. However, in the trunk, experts found hair and sweat marks that belonged to they. This suggested that they had been forcibly taken away in the trunk of their own car, leaving little hope for their safe return. The police investigated their bank transactions and found that money had been withdrawn from their account several times after they stopped hearing from their daughter. Reviewing the ATM surveillance footage revealed that the withdrawals were made by a young man who couldn't be identified right away. The police also requested a trace of all calls made from the phone number used by the imposters to contact the bank. Further investigation showed that the SIM card used to make those calls was purchased on a prepaid plan just before they disappeared. Unfortunately, the buyer's identity couldn't be determined, but it was discovered that the number was used to call a car rental company on June 6. Additionally, it was found that someone staying at a hotel had rented a Mazda RX-8 in the name of Tiffany Cole. Later, the same car was seen at the ATMs where the unidentified young man withdrew money from their accounts. A team of investigators used tracking beacons installed in rental cars to locate a Mazda RX-8, which was found parked at a hotel in Charleston. The car was linked to a couple who had been victimized by thieves, who had withdrawn $1,000 from her card and nearly $3,000 from her husband's card. A capture team was quickly dispatched to the hotel, where they burst into the room where the thieves were staying. The room was found to be filled with numerous packages and receipts from various stores, indicating that the thieves had been on a spending spree, purchasing items such as clothing, electronics, video games, cosmetics, perfumes, and expensive liquor. 3 people were found inside the location, clearly caught off guard by the police visit. Tiffany Cole, 23, her boyfriend Michael Jackson, 24, and Alan Lindell Wade, 19, all appeared surprised, confused, and frightened as police placed handcuffs on their wrists. The trio was taken to the police station, separated into different rooms for questioning, and initially pretended to be unaware of the accusations or refused to speak. A search of the premises uncovered significant evidence, including stolen bank cards, the laptop, some of Carol's jewelry, Reggie's expensive coin collection, the keys to their Lincoln Town car, and pawn shop receipts in Tiffany Cole's name. During the investigation, it was discovered that Tiffany had sold some of the stolen jewelry and spent the money with friends. After several hours of interrogation, Tiffany finally began to talk, bursting into tears as she confessed that she and her friends had robbed the elderly couple but claimed no further harm was done. The group then went on the run, using the stolen money for their own gain. Tiffany also implicated another individual, Bruce Kent Nixon, 19, who was paid $300 for his assistance in the crime. She stated that they never saw Bruce Kent Nixon again after the incident. Bruce Kent Nixon's decision to commit a crime was motivated by a promise of a fixed amount of money, which he quickly spent on illicit substances. As a result, he did not make an effort to hide or flee, living in the same city of Charleston. He was eventually arrested at his parents' home. It began in May 2005, when Tiffany visited the Summers to make a payment on a car she had purchased 6 months prior. The Summers, Carol, and Reggie were known for their hospitality and would often invite Tiffany to stay overnight or for a few days, treating her to good food and gifts. On this particular occasion, Tiffany arrived with her new boyfriend, and they were both welcomed to dinner and invited to stay overnight. During dinner, the Summers discussed their new life, and Carol inadvertently revealed that they had nearly $100,000 left over from the sale of their Charleston home, which they intended to use to enjoy their retirement without financial worries. Unbeknownst to her, Carol's careless comment sealed her in her husband's fate. Tiffany and Michael exchanged a telling glance, and that night, they began secretly plotting to get their hands on the Summers' substantial sum of money. In the morning, Tiffany and Michael bid they farewell and returned to South Carolina. Within a couple of weeks, they recruited accomplices and assigned roles and responsibilities. They then set their plan in motion. On June 6th, Tiffany rented an unassuming car. Meanwhile, Bruce Kent Nixon and Alan stole 4 shovels. Together, they drove to the outskirts of Jacksonville, where they identified a secluded spot in the woods and started digging a deep hole, which would ultimately become the Summers' grave. On the morning of July 8th, Tiffany purchased rope and duct tape from a hardware store, which she later provided to her accomplices, Bruce Kent Nixon and Alan. That evening, Bruce Kent Nixon and Alan approached the home of their intended victim, pretending to need assistance and asking to use the phone. Despite finding the young men suspicious, the homeowner, Carol, allowed them to enter. As soon as they were inside, they attacked Carol and her husband, who had rushed to her aid, threatening them with a toy gun. The Carol and Reggie was then bound with duct tape, blindfolded, and interrogated about the location of valuable items in the house, including their bank account information and PIN codes. They provided this information in an attempt to save their lives, as they were subjected to torture and death threats. After obtaining the necessary details, 2 additional individuals entered the house, assisting in dragging the Carol and Reggie into the backyard. They was then forced into the trunk of their own car, a Lincoln, which was being driven by Alan and Bruce Kent Nixon. Following behind them in a rented Mazda ARX-8 were Tiffany and Michael. The plan was that if a police patrol intercepted the car carrying the captive couple, a second car would draw the officers' attention away by recklessly speeding or breaking traffic rules. However, no police were encountered, and both cars reached their destination without incident. In the trunk, Reggie managed to free his arm and remove the bandages and duct tape covering his and his wife's faces, allowing them to breathe. However, there was no time to make any further attempts to escape. As the trunk lid opened, the Carol and Reggie was shocked and bewildered to see among their kidnappers Tiffany and her boyfriend, who had visited them recently. The kidnappers led the captive Carol and Reggie several dozen meters through the woods to a pre-dug grave. The Carol and Reggie begged for mercy, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The young kidnappers brutally murdered them by burying them alive. According to Bruce Kent Nixon, the kidnappers spent about an hour burying the Carol and Reggie under earth. Throughout the horrific ordeal, the bound and helpless Carol and Reggie cried, confessed their love for each other, and said their goodbyes. The investigation revealed that the spouses had died from suffocation, with soil found in their mouths, respiratory tracts, and stomachs, indicating they had been buried alive. After committing the heinous crime, the perpetrators abandoned the Lincoln in the woods and returned to town in a rented car. They then went to the Sumner house, where they stole all the valuables they could find, before returning to South Carolina to spend their loot. However, their freedom was short-lived, as the stolen cards were blocked after 2 days, and all participants in the crime were arrested 4 days later. During the trial, Bruce Kent Nixon was the only one who fully admitted his guilt from the beginning and cooperated with the investigation, hoping for a lighter sentence. He led the authorities to the burial site of the spouses and provided a detailed account of the events of that fateful night. In contrast, Tiffany claimed that her boyfriend, Michael was the mastermind behind the crime, driven by greed after learning about the large sum of money the Sumner family had received from the sale of their house. Tiffany's lawyer argued that she was merely an accomplice and not directly involved in the murder. Michael and Alan chose not to testify, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. The jury did not believe Tiffany Cole was innocent because she was involved in planning the crime, rented a car, and created a diversion in case they were chased by police. She also helped dig a grave for the victims and sold stolen items at a pawn shop, using the money to buy clothes and rent a limousine to celebrate their success, as seen in numerous photos. As a result, Bruce Kent Nixon was sentenced to life in prison without parole, while Michael Jackson, Tiffany, and Alan Lindell were given the death penalty. The criminals filed multiple appeals, but they were all denied, and the sentence remained unchanged. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaylee Mandotti. Kaylee Mandotti was born on August 20, 1998, in Webster, Texas, to parents Tack Mandotti and Allison Steele. Her family enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, with her mother working as a scientist and her father serving as an international executive director at MGM Resorts. Following her parents' divorce, Kaylee's mother, Allison, married NASA engineer Lawrence Buten, who resided in Houston. Although Kaylee's parents were separated, she maintained a close relationship with her father and regularly stayed in touch. Her stepfather, Lawrence, adored Kaylee and became a loving second father figure to her. Kaylee was an exceptional individual, cherished by her family and friends. She excelled as a student, team member, sister, and companion, spreading joy with her infectious laughter and kind heart. Throughout her academic career, Kaylee consistently demonstrated academic excellence and actively participated in extracurricular activities. Her diverse interests included horseback riding, piano playing, and theatrical performances. As a Girl Scout, Kaylee spent time exploring the Clear Lake neighborhood with friends and embarking on hikes with her parents. Upon graduating with honors from Clear Creek High School in League City, Texas, in 2016, Kaylee continued to pursue her passions. With a deep love for animals, Kaylee volunteered with a group called Animal Therapy. Her adventurous spirit drove her to seek out new experiences, and she aspired to try extreme sports and explore uncharted territories, always seeking thrilling experiences that brought her joy. At 19, Kaylee was a sophomore at Trinity University in San Antonio, studying communications. She was popular, with many friends, and led the cheerleading squad for the football team. Her beauty and charisma drew many admirers. During a football game, she met 22-year-old Mark Howerton, a tall, athletic professional baseball player. Initially, Kaylee didn't notice Mark, as she was interested in someone else, Jet. However, Mark was immediately smitten with Kaylee, captivated by her large black eyes and charm. Mark and Kaylee started dating in September 2017, despite their first 2 meetings not going well. Friends thought they were mismatched, as both were emotional and quick-tempered. Their relationship was marked by intense arguments and jealousy. Kaylee often had bruises and was afraid to retrieve her phone from Mark, a disturbing sign of the toxic relationship. The situation gets worse when Mark became aggressive, pulled out a gun, and threatened violence. Kaylee knew about her boyfriend's jealous nature and temper, but she would reassure her friends and ask them not to discuss their loud arguments publicly. However, on September 24, 2017, around 1 a.m., Kaylee's roommates had had enough and called the police due to loud noises and a man yelling and threatening violence coming from Kaylee's room. When the officer arrived, Mark was alone in the room, and Kaylee declined to press charges, downplaying the incident as just a lover's quarrel. Kaylee's friends suspected Mark of using controlled substances, which led to his angry outbursts. They recalled an incident where he threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony and reported it to the police. Despite their tumultuous relationship, they was deeply in love during calm moments. On October 29th, they attended the Mala Luna Music Festival in San Antonio, a major event with Gothic and industrial music. Mark and Kaylee were enjoying a fun time with their friends at a festival until Kaylee's ex-partner unexpectedly appeared, causing tension between Mark and Kaylee. They got into a big argument and left the festival early. Their friends didn't see them again that night. 6 hours later, Mark pulled up to a hospital in his black Mercedes, frantically seeking help. The medical staff found Kaylee unconscious and partially undressed in the front seat. The car was a mess, with her clothes scattered everywhere, and she was slumped forward, unresponsive. The hospital staff rushed Kaylee to the emergency room, where Mark revealed that they had taken illegal substances before the festival. This information helped doctors treat her for a possible overdose. Kaylee was then transferred to a specialized medical facility in Kyle, Texas, where a nurse with expertise in intimate assault cases examined her. The nurse found additional bruises on Kaylee's arms, legs, and ear. Further examination revealed that Kaylee had suffered blunt force trauma to the face and head, which ultimately led to her death. It became clear that Kaylee had been Kaylee of a fatal assault. Police launched an investigation into the death of Kaylee Mendotti, focusing on Mark as the primary suspect since he was the last person seen with her on the night of her death. During police interviews, Mark raised suspicions by repeatedly changing his story and omitting crucial details. Surveillance footage revealed that he and Kaylee had been to places that Mark had not mentioned in his account. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Mark had a history of aggressive behavior towards Kaylee, according to her friends and family. One of her sisters even expressed fear of him. The police uncovered previous incidents of violence between they, including an instance where Mark hit Kaylee's head against a car window and vandalized her dorm room at Trinity University. When Kaylee's parents learned about Mark's history of abuse, they were devastated. Her mother, Allison Steele, filed a lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging that the school failed to protect her daughter from Mark's attacks. The lawsuit, filed in Becker County District Court, also named Mark as a defendant, claiming that he killed Kaylee in a jealous rage. The lawsuit claims that Mark Howerton assaulted 19-year-old Kaylee Mendotti, resulting in her death. It also alleges that Trinity University staff, administrators, and campus police were aware of Howerton's violent behavior and threats to harm Kaylee, including physical harm and breaking her face. Despite this knowledge, the university failed to take action to protect Kaylee in the weeks leading up to her death. A Trinity University spokesperson declined to comment on the lawsuit, citing the ongoing legal process. The lawsuit states that the university's inaction, despite numerous reports of harassment, intimidation, domestic violence, and gender discrimination, led to Kaylee's tragic death. The lawsuit argues that if Trinity University had intervened as it should have, Kaylee's death could have been prevented. The university failed to follow its own policy on investigating and responding to potential cases of relationship violence and harassment. After an incident in his dorm room, Mark was banned from campus for a year due to a criminal trespass order. Despite this, he continued to violate the order. Furthermore, detectives uncovered numerous accounts of Mark's violent behavior towards Kaylee during their relationship. One of Kaylee's sisters reported that Mark threatened to throw Kaylee off a balcony during an argument. Another sister claimed that Mark threatened to shoot some of Kaylee's ex-boyfriend's brothers with a gun. Based on these allegations, the police issued a warrant for Mark's arrest in February 2018. He turned himself in to the authorities. Following the discovery of Kaylee's disarrayed room at the university, Mark faced multiple charges, including criminal acts, intimate violence, and abduction. However, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. The first trial regarding Kaylee's death began in December 2019. Prosecutors argued that Mark, known for his volatile temperament, fatally assaulted Kaylee in a fit of rage. They claimed that he drove her around for nearly 6 hours before taking her to the hospital. In his defense, Mark's lawyers suggested that Kaylee's death could be attributed to various factors, including the presence of banned substances in her system, which may have caused a spike in blood pressure or head trauma during intimate activity. Kaylee's mother described the injuries on her daughter's body as severe, comparable to those from a plane crash. The injuries were indeed extensive, as evident from photos shown to the Bayhart County jurors. The images depict Kaylee, a sophomore at Trinity University from San Antonio, Texas, with severe bruises, red marks and scratches all over her body, from head to toe. Both her eyelids were swollen and bruised. Only her back and the back of her legs showed no signs of injury. Dr. Suzanne Adrian, the forensic pathologist who conducted Kaylee Mandotti's autopsy, took graphics and photographs that revealed a subdural hematoma on the right side of Kaylee's brain. This type of injury is typically associated with traumatic brain damage. Kaylee's father, Tilak Kaylee, became emotional after seeing 2 photos of his daughter in the ICU, where she lay in a vegetative state, surrounded by numerous tubes, with her face barely visible. Dr. Suzanne Adrian testified about the severe head and facial injuries she found on Kaylee. These injuries included a dent in her skull, eye trauma, and extensive bruising on her jaws, mouth, gums, lips, and cheeks. There were also hemorrhages in both eyes. Dr. Dana concluded that Kaylee's death was caused by head and facial trauma from a blunt object. However, Dr. William Anderson disagreed with this conclusion after reviewing the autopsy results. He pointed out that there were no fractures in the eye sockets, nose, or face, which suggested that Kaylee was not attacked from the front. Instead, Dr. Anderson believed that Kaylee's injuries were more consistent with a fall and subsequent medical treatment. Defense attorney John Hunter presented an alternative explanation, arguing that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence to determine what happened to Kaylee Mandotti the night of the incident, making it impossible to prove Mark Howerton's involvement. During the trial, Hunter frequently highlighted Kaylee's history of drug use, including her treatment for substance dependence at a hospital. Professor Jason Wallach from the University of Sciences in Philadelphia testified that Kaylee had a high level of MDMA, ecstasy, or Molly, in her blood when her boyfriend took her to the hospital on October 29, 2017. The presence of this substance can turn a minor head injury fatal. Hunter stated that MDMA affects people differently, causing increased body temperature or electrolyte imbalances that can lead to loss of consciousness. Mark Howerton told investigators that he and Kaylee had an argument and engaged in consensual rough intimacy before she lost consciousness, but the origin and timing of her bruises remained unexplained. In December 2019, Allison believed Mark Howerton would be found responsible for her daughter's death. However, the trial ended in a mistrial due to the jury's inability to reach a verdict. Mark's defense claimed Kaylee's injuries were caused by hospital staff, leading to the hung jury in the 144th District Court, presided over by Judge Raymond Angeline. Because the jury was unable to reach a verdict, the case was dismissed, and Mark was acquitted of the charges in the first trial, leaving the case unresolved. District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, who had been handling the case from the beginning, expressed disappointment with the outcome and stated that he would review the case again. During this time, Kaylee's parents, Allison and Lawrence, began their own investigation. They gathered evidence and autopsy reports from the police and focused on a small, round bruise near their daughter's ear. They speculated that Mark might have hit her head against the car window, causing her to hit the door lock and get bruised. They hoped this new information would establish Mark's guilt. Lawrence found a similar Mercedes to Mark's and recreated the incident with photos. With the Texas Rangers' help, Lawrence got records and affidavits for an arrest warrant for assault and mischief. The records provided a detailed timeline of events leading up to Kaylee's death and evidence found during the investigation. The authorities exposed Mark Howerton's alleged deception to the Rangers and revealed the evidence that resulted in his arrest. Prosecutors described Howerton as a controlling boyfriend who constantly called Kaylee Mandotti, took away her phone, and isolated her from friends. 2 weeks before Kaylee's death, Howerton physically assaulted her, pushing her against a brick wall and trashing her dorm room. After the incident, Kaylee asked for space, but Howerton responded with dozens of messages, including a threat to end his life. Kaylee pleaded with him not to harm himself. That evening, Howerton called Kaylee around 200 times. Later, they attended a festival where they argued over Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. Mark Howerton took Kaylee from the festival, drove her to a deserted parking lot near the Whataburger headquarters, and spent over an hour there, according to GPS camera records. Prosecutors believe that it was in this parking lot where Mark Howerton attacked and killed Kaylee Mandotti. Kaylee Mandotti's family expressed gratitude to the Texas Rangers for their diligent efforts in securing suitable criminal charges against Kaylee's alleged attacker. Mark Howerton's pre-trial began in June 2023. During the trial, the prosecution initially considered presenting a video recorded by Kaylee's parents in the hospital that showed her injuries, but ultimately decided not to use it. The prosecution took into account evidence gathered with the assistance of the Texas Rangers, despite potential complications and new disputes. Mark Howerton was found guilty of aggravated assault resulting in bodily harm that led to a lethal outcome. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a fine of $110,000, and ordered to pay restitution to Kaylee Mandotti's family. Furthermore, he was prohibited from contacting over 20 individuals connected to the case. Now over 30 years old, Mark is serving his sentence in the Wilkes County Jail and will be eligible for parole in 2033. The conviction brought some closure to Kaylee's family, but felt the sentence was not enough for their loss. In the second trial, Mark Howerton faced additional charges, including aggravated assault and criminally negligent homicide, on top of the initial manslaughter charge. The prosecution changed its strategy to build a stronger case against him. However, Kaylee's family and prosecutors were unhappy with the outcome and pushed for a retrial. Kaylee Mandotti's tragic story shows the devastating effects of violence on a young life and her family's struggle for justice. Kaylee's story is a powerful reminder of the consequences of violence against young people with promising futures. Despite the conviction, her family believes the verdict does not bring justice for their daughter. In 2021, Allison filed a civil lawsuit against Trinity University, alleging negligence in protecting her daughter. She claimed the university failed to inform Kaylee's guardians about Mark Howerton's destructive behavior in her dorm room and took no action against him, allowing him continued access to her daughter. It is unclear whether evidence collected by Allison and Lawrence was presented during Mark Howerton's trial. However, in 2023, he was found guilty of aggravated assault causing bodily harm, despite being acquitted of the more serious charge. Prosecutors noted that Kaylee's family was satisfied with the verdict, as it brought an end to the prolonged legal proceedings. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sydney Loof. Sydney Irene Loof was born on August 21, 1993 in Broken Bow, Nebraska, to George and Cecil Loof. She spent her childhood in Arcadia with her parents until 2000, when the family moved to Ney, where her mother worked as a special education teacher and her father was the school principal. Growing up, Sydney was an energetic and outdoor-oriented girl who loved nature. Her father, George, often took her fishing during her school years. She was also involved in sports, playing basketball and golf, where she showed promise. However, she developed scoliosis, which forced her to give up many of her favorite activities and ended her sports career. After graduating from high school in 2011, Sydney found employment at a local Menards store that specialized in home improvement products. Despite moving from Norfolk to Lincoln for work, Sydney remained close to her family, who made an effort to stay in touch almost daily and regularly met for dinner. Although she lived independently, Sydney frequently returned to her parents' house. Sydney had been battling depression, feeling that the medications she was on were actually making her condition worse. Her mom, Susie, was deeply concerned and urged her to see a new doctor who prescribed different medications. During phone calls with her mom, Sydney's voice sounded increasingly optimistic as she reported that her mental state was improving. She was attempting to make positive changes in her life, including searching for a new job, as working in a store didn't fulfill her ambitions. However, she was still uncertain about her career goals, which contributed to her feelings of depression. By November 2017, Sydney's mental health had taken a turn for the worse, leading her to take antidepressants and occasionally smoke marijuana. Despite her family and friends offering support, she yearned for romance and love. As a young modern woman with an interest in the same gender, Sydney sometimes turned to social media to find potential dates. To expand her social circle and find a friend, she used Tinder, a popular dating app. In November 2017, Sydney met a man named Aubrey online, and they started exchanging messages. They quickly discovered they had a lot in common, including a love for gambling, hiking, and good food. After just 100 messages, they decided to meet in person on November 14th. Sydney visited Aubrey at his home in Wilbur, and their first meeting went really well. They hit it off and agreed to meet again the following day at Aubrey's house. Before their second meeting, Sydney worked her shift at the store, went home, and got ready. She even took a photo of herself and posted it on Tinder with the caption, "Ready for my date." When Aubrey arrived, they drove off together. The next day, however, Sydney failed to show up for work, which was unusual for the normally reliable Sydney. Despite her high spirits in the days leading up to her disappearance, her family was worried when her coworkers informed them that she hadn't shown up. Sydney's mother, Susie, revealed that her daughter had been struggling with anxiety and depression in the days leading up to her disappearance. Sydney had discussed her deteriorating mental health with her family, who advised her to see a doctor again to take antidepressants. That was the last time Sydney's family saw her. When Sydney's parents went to her apartment, they were extremely surprised to find that she had left her favorite cat, Mimsy, without food or water. This was extremely unlike the caring pet owner they knew Sydney to be. Concerned, they reported Sydney missing to the police. During a welfare check of Sydney's home, the police found the apartment locked and saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, the family remained adamant that something was wrong, and the police took their concerns seriously. On November 16, 2017, Sydney Loof was reported missing after failing to arrive at her workplace, the Menards store showroom on 27th Street and Cornhusker Highway. Sydney had a spinal condition that affected her gait, making her stand out in a crowd. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing a white Columbia brand jacket and a cream-colored shirt. According to her parents, Sydney told her friend on Snapchat on Wednesday morning that she had gone on a date with a man she met online the previous night and planned to meet up with her again that evening. Her car was found in Northeast Lincoln, and police conducted interviews, searching for any leads that could help locate Sydney. A massive search effort was launched to find Sydney, featuring highway billboards with her photo and a televised manhunt. Susie remained adamant that something had happened to her daughter after her date. To support her claim, she shared a screenshot of a Snapchat post by Sydney, captioned, "Ready for my date." Sydney's friends confirmed that she was planning to meet a woman named Aubrey, whom she met on Tinder. During the investigation, police examined Sydney's phone records and surveillance footage from her workplace, which led them to identify a key person of interest. They traced Sydney's last phone signal to a cell tower in the Wilbur neighborhood, likely close to Aubrey's residence, although they had no information about Aubrey's identity at the time. Authorities started looking for a man named Aubrey, who was the last person to see Sydney before she went missing. The problem was that no one knew Aubrey's real identity or if he even existed. Sydney's friend Brooklyn took matters into her own hands and decided to track down Aubrey using Tinder. She downloaded the app, found Aubrey's profile, and exchanged phone numbers with him. This allowed the police to finally learn Aubrey's real name, which was Bailey Boswell, a 26-year-old woman. Further investigation revealed that Bailey lived in an apartment near the cell tower where Sydney's phone was last connected. Bailey shared this apartment with her partner, 52-year-old Aubrey Trail. Bailey Boswell, from a normal and wholesome family in Lyons, Iowa, grew up as a friendly and successful student who excelled in basketball and running. However, following her father's death, her life took a downward turn. She started keeping bad company and got involved with alcohol and illicit drugs. On a dating website, Bailey met Aubrey Trail, a man with a history of fraud, issuing fraudulent checks and theft. Aubrey had created a cult where he referred to himself as the Vampire Daddy and paid women $200 weekly to follow his unusual rules. At the time of Sydney's disappearance, Aubrey and Bailey faced a court order to pay over $40,000 in fraud reparations and had multiple misdemeanors against them. On November 19, 2017, they went into hiding. When police searched their apartment, they found that some walls had been scrubbed with bleach, which a neighbor confirmed. After a few days, the police located Aubrey and Bailey at a hotel in Branson, Missouri, and took them into custody a few weeks after Sydney's disappearance was reported. A thorough examination of phone records and Bailey's location data led the police to the gruesome discovery of Sydney's remains. Her body had been dismembered, with 13 parts found in black plastic bags in ditches in Clay County. Tragically, some of her organs, including her heart, were missing. Bailey and Aubrey were charged with first-degree murder, improperly disposing of human remains, and conspiracy to commit a felony. Bailey pleaded not guilty to all three charges. Aubrey, on the other hand, pleaded not guilty to felony murder and conspiracy, but guilty to improperly disposing of human remains. However, Aubrey's various statements were inconsistent, and he often appeared confused, changing his account of events and introducing new characters. He made bizarre claims, including that he was a vampire who could fly, and spoke about witchcraft. Aubrey claimed to be a cult leader and vampire, telling authorities he had witches in the cult who needed to kill another woman to gain powers. In one of his early court hearings, Aubrey admitted to killing Sydney Loof, but said it was an accident. He claimed to have paid Sydney $5,000 to participate in a threesome with two other women, which Sydney had agreed to. However, during the act, he strangled her with a cord by mistake. Aubrey also confessed to cutting Sydney's body into pieces, a ritual according to his beliefs, to release her soul to the gods in a sacred place. He believed this would help her reincarnate faster. However, the prosecution presented evidence contradicting Aubrey's story. Surveillance footage from November 14th showed Aubrey and Bailey checking into a Lincoln hotel near Sydney's home. The following day, they visited a home improvement store, buying a hacksaw, bleach, a folding saw, a stationary knife, and the bags used to store Sydney's remains. Furthermore, a surveillance camera caught Sydney encountering Aubrey at the Menards store on November 15th, unaware of the danger she was in. On June 11, 2018, the first court hearing took place regarding the murder and improper burial of Sydney Loof. Although separate trials were ordered for Bailey and Aubrey, the charges against them were essentially the same. The trials were held in Lexington because the defense attorneys successfully argued that a fair trial would be impossible in Wilbur due to the extensive publicity surrounding the case. The prosecution's case rested on the argument that Sydney's death was a premeditated murder, as evidenced by the fact that she was strangled and that the crime was carefully planned and executed. The jury listened to three other women who had previously dated Aubrey and Bailey, all of whom they met through Tinder. Each of these women had been intimate with Bailey and had also been involved with Aubrey. One of them shared that she had even gone on a trip with them after they met, during which Aubrey gave her $200 a week and invited her to join his group, which he called witches, telling her that she would have to torture and kill someone to become a member. Another woman testified that Bailey had discussed breaking her fingers and dissecting a body in detail, revealing her fascination with torture. The prosecution pieced together the events of the fateful evening of November 15, 2017. Sydney had arranged to meet a woman she had known for a couple of days, with whom she had been chatting on Tinder. Bailey picked Sydney up from her apartment, and they drove around in his car. The car eventually stopped at Bailey's house, where Sydney was coaxed into the apartment. Once inside, Bailey and Aubrey attacked her, strangling her with an extension cord on the living room floor. Afterwards, Bailey and Aubrey meticulously cleaned the apartment, which the prosecution argued was a premeditated act. The next day, November 16th, they dismembered Sydney's body and dumped her remains in Clay County. The court heard testimony from Jennifer, the landlord, who stated on November 16th, she drove into the garage and immediately noticed a strong chlorine smell that intensified when she entered the house. The medical examiner testified that Sydney's death was ruled a homicide by asphyxiation. Toxicology reports showed that Sydney had antidepressants in her system at the time of death. In addition to the missing organs, the upper left arm, from just above the elbow to below the shoulder, was also found to be missing from Sydney's body. The prosecutors sought the death penalty for both defendants, and if the sentence was deemed unjust, the case would be retried. However, Aubrey denied any involvement in the occult and pleaded guilty only to improperly burying Sydney's remains. During his trial, Aubrey shouted that Bailey had no involvement in Sydney's death, claiming Bailey's innocence. In a dramatic turn, Aubrey then slashed his throat 3 times with a razor blade but survived and was detained until he made a full recovery. Aubrey testified he lied about Sydney Loof's death, admitting he met her in 2017 and paid her for illegal activities. He claimed Sydney died accidentally during an intimate act with an extension cord in November 2017. Aubrey confessed to dismembering and dumping her body, but maintained it was an accident, and he didn't seek help because he thought no one would believe him. Aubrey confessed to getting rid of Sydney's body, claiming it was an accident from an extension cord during intimate act. Bailey denied involvement, with her lawyers saying she was also a victim of Aubrey's manipulation. However, phone records and location data proved Bailey's involvement, tracking her near where Sydney's body parts were found. The court learned that Bailey initiated contact with Sydney and arranged a meeting. Bailey drove to Sydney's duplex on the evening of November 15th to pick her up. The prosecution claimed that Bailey took pleasure in discussing cruel acts and enjoyed talking about torture with Aubrey. Evidence presented in court revealed a planned crime on the day Sydney was killed. Bailey and Aubrey went to Home Depot around noon that day, where they bought tools, including a hacksaw, scissors, and a box cutter, as part of their plan. Bailey sent Sydney a text message inquiring about her day, and phone records and surveillance footage show that she sent the message from the Menards parking lot, where Aubrey was also present. Sydney, who worked at Menards, seemed unaware of Bailey's presence. A few hours later, Bailey sent Sydney another message on Tinder, stating that she was at Sydney's apartment and would pick her up soon. However, phone records indicate that instead of going on a date as Sydney believed, Bailey and Aubrey went to the apartment where they lived. Bailey's attorney, Todd Lancaster, argued that the evidence only showed that Bailey was guilty of aiding and abetting the improper disposal of Sydney's body by buying bleach in garbage bags. On November 8, 2021, Bailey Boswell received a life sentence. The Loof family had waited 3 long years, grieving and yearning for their Sydney, anticipating a verdict that would bring them solace. Prior to this, on July 11, 2019, a jury took less than 3 hours to convict Aubrey Trail of premeditated conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and improper burial of human remains. A 3-judge panel described his crime as cold and calculated. In the trial's second phase, Determining whether he should face execution, county prosecutors secured the death penalty for Aubrey Trail, fulfilling their promise. Consequently, on June 9, 2021, Aubrey Trail was put to death by lethal injection. Aubrey Trail, the con artist accused of brutally murdering Nebraska woman Sydney Loof, allegedly deceived his cult followers by claiming to be a flying mind-reading vampire with a coven of 12 witches. He claimed these witches gained their powers by killing people. Fortunately, in this real-life story, justice prevailed, and through the trial, the monster faced the end of his trail. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in 1994 in England to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her parents had another child, a younger sister named Hannah. From a very early age, the sisters developed a strong bond and grew up in a loving and caring family environment. When Emily turned 9 and Hannah was 7, the entire family relocated to New Zealand, making Auckland their new home. However, after moving to New Zealand, Emily began associating with an undesirable group of people. Concerned about her influence, her middle-class parents made the decision to send her back to the UK in 2010 to live with her grandparents and start anew. Emily moved to England to pursue her studies at Brockenhurst College, where she aimed to earn a business degree and harbored ambitions of becoming a model. During her time in England, she resided at her grandparents' house in Bournemouth, a popular seaside resort town located in the county of Dorset on the English Channel coast. While in England, Emily met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, who made a strong impression on her. Their communication gradually developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily returned to New Zealand to visit her family, whom she hadn't seen for about 6 months. Her father picked her up from the airport, and Emily greeted him enthusiastically, giving him a tight hug and telling him how much she'd missed him. Emily was extremely close to her father, who adored her and missed her cheerful smile, infectious laughter, and playful dirty jokes. The next day, the whole family visited Emily's favorite pizzeria. She filled her parents in on her college life, mentioning her modeling career and the wonderful friends she'd made. She also talked about her boyfriend, Elliot Turner, and casually mentioned that she was considering ending their relationship when she got back to England, as she felt too young for something serious at that point. Emily spent the next few weeks socializing with friends and family, having a wonderful time without arousing any suspicion that she would be leaving soon. When the time came for her flight to board, she found it difficult to bid farewell to her family. However, she made a promise to return in 5 months to watch the Rugby World Cup matches, which were scheduled to begin on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her father, Emily mentioned that she had broken up with Elliot, but she didn't elaborate on the details. The reason behind the breakup was that Elliot had seen the photos Emily had posted on social media while she was in New Zealand, which showed her with other guys, and he became extremely jealous. Elliot Turner, son of a wealthy jeweler, was living a seemingly carefree life at 20 years old. He was a familiar face in Bournemouth's local bar and club scene, where he was part of a group of affluent young men known as the Firm. His friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner, due to his boasts. In December 2010, he met Emily, and the couple indulged in the resort's high life, often staying out late into the night. However, Turner's history of obsessing over women soon resurfaced, and his jealousy sparked violent arguments in the relationship. Those who knew him described Turner as having a threatening, aggressive, violent, controlling, and possessive nature. In January 2008, 16-year-old Elliot Turner received a police harassment warning for relentlessly sending text messages and emails to his ex-girlfriend after she ended their relationship. With a sense of entitlement and no need to work thanks to his parents' financial support, Turner thrived on being the center of attention. He was skilled at manipulating people, including his parents, and his life revolved around parties, women, alcohol, and illegal substances. Turner had an inflated sense of self-importance, often carrying a hammer as a symbol of power and control. His friends believed he fancied himself a gangster, seeking to become the go-to person for help and admiration. He would often buy drinks for everyone at the bar, though his flashy new Mini Cooper was actually a gift from his grandmother. Turner struggled to maintain his tough guy image, frequently posting boastful, street-smart messages on social media, where he referred to himself as Scarface or God. He had no shortage of female admirers, but when he met Emily, he formed a strong attachment to her. She reinforced the image of himself as a successful person, an image he had worked hard to cultivate. As their relationship progressed, Turner began to exhibit controlling behavior more frequently. He even made a disturbing threat, telling Emily he would take her life in an emotional outburst. In a note to him a few months before her death, Emily wrote a list of 4 requests. Firstly, her love for him. Secondly, a plea to stop making threats on her life. Thirdly, a request to refrain from discussing his ex-girlfriends. And lastly, a desire for him to tone down his aggressive behavior, be cooler and less intimidating, as it was causing her fear. When Emily realized that Turner's controlling behavior had become unbearable, she knew she had to end the relationship. People like Turner, however, rarely accept rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily went to a nightclub with her friends, unaware that Turner had been monitoring her Facebook messages. He discovered that she was seeing someone else, which enraged him. Turner stormed into the club and confronted Emily, sparking an argument. The situation escalated when Emily threw her drink in his face. Turner responded by harassing her verbally and making violent threats. He also criticized her outfit, claiming it was too provocative. Despite Emily's attempts to break free, Turner refused to accept that their relationship was over. Elliot ruined her evening, so she decided to leave, yet her ex-boyfriend followed her. His friends heard him say, "I will kill her. I will go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I would do 10 years, it wouldn't bother me." Turner caught up with Emily, somehow persuading her to go to his house. He said he wanted to talk in a more relaxed atmosphere. Elliot Turner lived with his parents, perhaps that's why Emily went with him. Maybe she thought he would behave more calmly in the presence of his parents. Neighbors saw them go inside the house. Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called the emergency service the next morning, saying Emily wouldn't wake up. At around 9 a.m., Anita received instructions from the operator on how to assist Emily while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. However, when the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics were only able to pronounce Emily Longley dead. Anita, an Indonesian citizen, had moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner, and the couple had a son together. In hindsight, they had spoiled their son, which proved to be a mistake. During Anita's conversation with the emergency services operator, her voice lacked the emotional distress expected of a mother who had just discovered her son's girlfriend's lifeless body. Instead, she sounded eerily calm, as if the situation was normal. In New Zealand, thousands of miles from England, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 a.m. to find multiple missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and younger daughter Hannah. A voicemail from Hannah was also waiting, but Mark struggled to decipher what she was saying. Then he heard Caroline's scream in the background, followed by the devastating words, "Emily is dead." Mark refused to accept it. He immediately called his mother in England, and when she answered, her uncontrollable crying shattered his world. Moments later, a police officer took the phone and delivered the tragic news. "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily has passed away." Still in denial, Mark couldn't process the news, remembering how Emily had been sitting on his couch with a smile just a week prior. Flying to the UK, the grief-stricken father struggled to come to terms with the devastating news that his daughter was dead. But the harsh reality was that it wasn't just a terrible dream. The loss of their eldest daughter was a profoundly distressing experience for Emily's parents. The police informed them that Emily had passed away peacefully in her sleep, a revelation that was utterly incomprehensible. She was, after all, young and healthy. The police gathered some evidence, but the circumstances surrounding Emily's death remained shrouded in mystery. They had to patiently wait for the autopsy results to shed some light on the tragedy. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, claimed to investigators that they had spent the entire night at home and hadn't heard a sound. However, Elliot's actions raised suspicions. He openly grieved Emily's loss by posting photos of the two of them together on his Facebook page. Since the police lacked concrete evidence to disprove Elliot's and his parents' story, they were unable to contest the claim that Emily had died mysteriously in her sleep. During the investigation of any death, determining the cause of death is the primary concern. Once investigators establish the cause of death, they understand the nature of the case and how to proceed with the investigation. Prior to receiving the autopsy results, investigators discovered a disturbing Facebook post made by Emily a few days before her death. On Thursday, May 5th, Emily wrote, "I have a stalker. I recently received a strange phone call where the caller claimed to know everything about me. When I asked how they obtained my number, they replied, 'I'll tell you when I see you.' They continued to ask me out and wouldn't stop calling. I eventually hung up on them." At the same time, investigators discovered that Emily had a public argument with Elliot Turner at a nightclub, witnessed by other patrons, before her death. Further inquiry revealed that Turner's friends knew he was possessive and controlling, constantly monitoring Emily's actions. They were aware that Turner had discovered Emily's secret meeting with another man and had repeatedly threatened to kill her. However, his friends downplayed these threats, thinking they were just a ploy to boost Turner's street credibility. The autopsy results did not provide a definitive cause of Emily's death, although experts suggested strangulation as a possible explanation, citing physical findings consistent with neck compression. Investigators suspected that one of the Turner family members might be involved in her death, leading them to install listening devices in the Turner household. Their goal was to uncover any potential secrets or miscommunications within the family. As it turned out, their suspicions were well-founded. Elliot Turner coached his mother on how to respond to police questioning, dictating what she should say. His father, Lee Turner, initially seemed to recognize the impropriety of his son's actions, but eventually surrendered to the will of his son and wife. During the trial, Elliot Turner confessed to causing Emily's death, claiming he acted in self-defense after a violent confrontation in his bedroom. He alleged that, during the altercation, he was forced to grab Emily by the neck, but denied strangling her. According to his account, he discovered her lifeless body in his bed the following morning. Elliot Turner confessed to threatening Emily and feeling upset and deceived on the evening preceding her death. According to him, Emily initiated a physical altercation, and in response he grabbed her by the neck to restrain her. He stated that he held her in this position for approximately 5 to 6 seconds before releasing her. Emily's father, Mark, reflected on the difficulty of losing his daughter. He explained that coping with death is never easy, and every anniversary is a painful reminder, especially birthdays, Christmas, and Easter, which were the last times he truly spent quality time with her. Mark painfully admitted that the hardest aspect for him was that he would never get to see the woman Emily could have become. He missed witnessing the life she was deprived of and the woman she was growing into, which he was extremely proud of. As her father, Mark acknowledged his bias, but genuinely believed that the world was a better place with Emily in it, and certainly more enjoyable. During the trial, Elliot Turner was depicted as a spoiled, affluent youngster whose parents attempted to help him evade punishment. The court learned that Elliot was given complete freedom in his family's luxurious home, where he would host wild parties for his friends from middle-class backgrounds. His father, Lee, described Elliot as unruly and, to minimize disturbances, gave him his own living space in the converted garage, allowing him to come and go as he pleased. It was in this room, equipped with a minibar, that Elliot strangled Emily to death on his bed. The police discovered search queries on his seized computers regarding death by strangulation and methods to avoid punishment for a crime. The primary motive was revealed to be jealousy, as the court heard testimony that Elliot discovered Emily had spent the night with another man while he was in custody. Elliot boasted that the jury would believe his twisted story that Emily had attacked him, and he acted in self-defense when he strangled her in a fit of jealousy. In letters from prison, he planned to sell the rights to his story, drive a new Range Rover, and move to Spain to live a fashionable life. However, the jury quickly shattered his illusions, finding him guilty. On May 22, 2012, the court sentenced Elliot Turner to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. The judge described him as a man of striking arrogance, stating that Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl whose light had been suddenly and needlessly extinguished by Elliot, who did not truly love her but saw her as a trophy to control. Elliot's parents, Anita and Lee Turner, were also on trial. They tried to cover up their son's crime, with Lee destroying Elliot's confession letter and Anita postponing the ambulance call to allow their son to cover his tracks. When asked why she did not call an ambulance, Anita Turner replied that she did not believe Emily was dead. Both Anita and Lee were found guilty of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 27 months in prison. The judge said they chose to fight the case, showing little remorse, and the anguished tone of Lee's voice on the recorded tape revealed their guilt. After serving their sentence, they still live in the house where Emily Longley died. Emily's dad, Mark, broke down as he spoke about the verdicts, supported by his former wife Caroline and daughter Hannah. He said the revelations over the past 5 weeks have shocked and disgusted them, and that a man as evil as Turner could treat a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently is beyond belief. They are proud that Emily had come halfway around the world to build a better life for herself, which Turner decided to end. Mark said there was a lot of talk about Turner's boasting, and that no one had taken his threat seriously until it was too late. He added that even Turner's mother did not take it seriously when he texted her to say he was going to break Emily's neck. Perhaps if someone had taken his threat seriously, Emily might be with them today. Mark hopes Turner suffers every day in prison for what he has done. In October 2020, it was reported that Elliot Turner was attacked by his cellmates in prison. This occurred after he displayed photos of Emily in his cell and bragged about receiving letters from female admirers. His boasting about his anticipated return to a luxurious lifestyle, complete with champagne, Bentley cars, and numerous women, angered his cellmates and prompted the attack. Despite this, Turner will be eligible to apply for early release from prison, and it is hoped that the parole board will exercise sound judgment and make a prudent decision regarding an individual who still shows no remorse for his actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vera Pekteleva. Vera Pekteleva was born on September 24, 1997 in Kelos, Kovo Oblast. As she grew up, she became a cheerful and creative individual. With a passion for singing, she secured first place in various school competitions. Although her parents, Oksana and Yvonne, divorced during her school years, they remained on good terms. Vera maintained a positive relationship with both her father's new wife and her mother's new husband. Those who knew her described Vera as a kind, optimistic, and non-confrontational person. As mentioned earlier, Vera was a creative individual, and her family was taken aback when, after completing high school, she opted to move to Kovo and pursue a technical education at the state university, rather than following a more artistic route. Her mother, Oksana, resided in Kisilov, which was approximately 110 miles away from Kovo, and Vera would visit her during her spare time. During one of her visits in 2016, Vera encountered Vladislav Kanyus, a young man of her age. Unlike Vera, Vlad, as he was commonly known, was a complete contrast. He did not have life goals, was introverted, and had a quick temper. Having dropped out of school after the 9th grade, Vlad grew up in a troubled home. After his mother abandoned the family, he was left to live with his father. Unfortunately, his life was filled with more challenges. His father had frequent run-ins with the law, which ultimately culminated in him taking his own life in front of Vlad, leaving an indelible mark on him. Vera fell in love with Vlad despite having little in common with him. However, her parents were against their relationship, knowing Vlad's troubled past. Vera's father discovered her relationship with Vlad, and he asked her to end it. Instead of breaking up with Vlad, Vera just stopped discussing him with her parents. Vlad was never present at family gatherings, and his pictures were not posted on Vera's social media. It seemed as though Vera was keeping him a secret, according to Oksana, Vera's mother. One important detail is worth noting. In 2019, Vera and Vlad began cohabiting in Kovo. Vera's parents financially assisted with the apartment, and Vlad, who was unemployed by choice, thoroughly enjoyed living with Vera, who was not only beautiful and intelligent, but also financially secure. She consistently had money and supported him. However, their relationship was strained. Vlad struggled with alcohol addiction and showed no inclination to seek help or change his behavior. Her parents were convinced that Vlad was abusive to her. After years of suffering, Vera made the brave decision to end the toxic relationship in November 2019. However, Vlad refused to accept this and disputed her choice. As her parents had financially supported the couple's apartment, Vera reasonably expected Vlad to vacate the premises. But Vlad was unwilling to give up the benefits of living off someone else's generosity. Now here's an excerpt from Vlad's testimony. It will give you a more accurate idea of what happened after Vera decided to end her relationship with him. But remember, this is Vlad's testimony, so it's up to you whether you believe his words. On December 15, 2019, a fight broke out between him and Vera over his desire to visit a nightclub, which she opposed. This was not their first disagreement. Throughout their relationship, Vera had been frequently visiting Selos and drifting away from him. She even confessed to speaking with another person. In fact, she had ended her relationship with Vlad a month prior. He later discovered from a mutual friend that she was involved with Alexander, a resident of Selos. Although he had never met Alexander, when he confronted Vera, she acknowledged the relationship. At the time, they continued to cohabitate, but following their December 15 altercation, she left, taking some belongings with her. Despite their separation, they remained in contact by phone, and on January 12, 2020, he offered to assist her in relocating her remaining belongings to a new apartment. She agreed to meet him, and they scheduled a time for January 13th. They met in the afternoon, packed up both her belongings and his, since he too wanted to move out, and drank beer, lur, and vodka. They got drunk, but there was no conflict until he brought up the topic of their relationship and revealed that he knew about Alexander. She became enraged, swearing at him, insulting him, and starting to physically assault him, kicking him at least 5 times in the groin area and slapping him in the face at least 8 times. He only felt pain from the kicks, not the slaps. Vera instigated the physical fight, which made him angry because she had lied about not seeing another guy and was upset that he knew about her personal life. That was the testimony that Vlad told the police. Next, we'll discuss the other side of this story, which gives every reason to believe that Vlad was not honest in his testimony. Vera sent a voice message to her friend at 5:08 p.m. In the message, she mentioned that she was already at the apartment, packing her belongings. She expected to be settled into her new apartment around 6 p.m. and requested her friend's help to move her things from the taxi to the apartment. Just 3 minutes later, Vera sent a new voice message. She invited her friend to come to the apartment where she lived with Vlad and help her with the move. However, Vera did not have time to finish as Vlad intervened by saying, "No one's coming in here." So he was against Vera's friend coming to the apartment. It seems that the situation began to get out of control because 4 minutes later, at 5:15 p.m., Vera, in a low voice, asked her friend to come. It looks like this message was a call for help. She deliberately spoke in a low voice so that Vlad wouldn't hear her. At 5:25 p.m., Vera sends another voice message, and Vlad's dominant voice is heard again. He tells Vera's friend not to bother them and to wait for Vera to text her. At 7:19 p.m., Vlad recorded the voice message himself. From that moment on, Vera did not have access to her phone. She was left alone with the monster. But what happened next needs to be explained. At about 3 a.m., the neighbors from the same floor started waking up from the terrible screams coming from apartment 738. A witness called what was happening a massacre. The screams were so loud that 15 people gathered in the hallway near the apartment. Vlad's brother was among them, and he remembered Vlad's words and realized they needed to break down the door, since his brother had previously said that he would take Vera's life. The door to the apartment was made of iron, so the neighbors started looking for tools to force it open. All this time, Vera's heart-rending cries were coming from the apartment. People called the emergency service, and these calls eventually became part of a separate investigation. For 30 minutes, the police still weren't at the scene. It lasted until 6:30 a.m. During these 3.5 hours, people called the police, but no one came to Vera's aid. The witnesses made 7 calls to the emergency service while Vera was fighting for her life, but no one came. The last words they heard from behind the door were Vlad's. He said, "Vera, forgive me. I love you very much." In the end, the neighbors found a crowbar in a nearby parking lot and broke down the door. By this time, Vera was already dead, and Vlad was in the bathroom. He was very drunk. While Vera was painfully dying at the hands of her former boyfriend, and the neighbors were trying in vain to get help from the police, the 112 operators were talking about life, laughing, drinking tea, and were very unhappy that they were being disturbed. The police arrived only after it became known that Vera had died. Later, they will claim that there was no gas in one car and that there were no available officers as everyone was busy with other calls. As a result, the 112 operators and the police officers on duty that night were on trial too. The video from the police station was published during the investigation, but there is no point in translating it into English. I can describe it in just one word: indifference, and it is clear even without subtitles. But Vlad claimed there were no conflicts between him and Vera until 5 a.m. However, the forensic examination showed that he lied. Vera received her first injury 6 hours before her death, that is, at about midnight. It meant that Vlad Kanyus was beating and injuring her for 6 hours until she took her last breath. Her body bore around 100 injuries, including stab wounds, a broken nose, and broken ribs. Strangulation marks were also visible on her neck. If the police's inaction shocked you, then be prepared for what comes next, which will be just as astonishing. More than 1,000 people gathered for Vera Pekteleva's funeral. The church could not accommodate everyone. According to Oksana, Vera's mother, the funeral home spent 4 hours trying to restore Vera's face with makeup, but she still could not recognize her daughter. That's how serious her injuries were. Meanwhile, Vlad Kanyus was telling the investigators his version of what happened. He of course tried to downplay his role in this crime. He said about that night that when he started talking to her about our relationship, he suggested they should get back together and told her that he knew she was seeing another guy. A conflict between them started. She didn't like it. After that, she started swearing, insulting him, and hitting him. Namely, she kicked him at least 5 times in the groin area and hit him in the face at least 8 times with her palm. He didn't feel any pain when she slapped him. However, when she kicked him between the legs, he experienced physical pain. That is, Vera started hitting him first. It made him angry. He was angry that she lied and said she wasn't dating another guy. At the same time, Vera said that he was prying into her personal life because he knew everything about her. During this time, she continued to insult him, and he got angry and hit her several times with his palms, about 4 times on the head, but the blows were of small force. When he hit Vera, she fell to the floor, hitting the closet. She was lying on her stomach. She also hit him back, namely, she beat his head with her palms and fists. It was painful. He asked her to stop, but she didn't stop. He remembered she scratched his back. Then he decided to take her by the neck. He saw an iron that was on the floor. He took this iron and wrapped the iron cord around Vera's neck. After that, he tightened the cord around her neck slightly. He squeezed her neck for a minute and a half or two. At that moment, he didn't realize that he could kill Vera with his actions. He didn't want to kill Vera. He was tightening the cord around Vera's neck because he wanted to scare her. He wanted her to lose consciousness. He wanted her to fall asleep for 15 minutes. After he removed the cord from her neck, she started making sounds, coughing or wheezing. When he removed the cord from Vera's neck, she was in a prone position, but then he put her on her back. At that moment, she was unconscious. At the same time, she made sounds, that is, wheezed. He thought she was fine. After a while, he started waking Vera up, but she was unresponsive. Then, he started listening to whether her heart was beating. He put his ear to her mouth, then to her heart. She had no pulse, she wasn't breathing. He don't remember what happened next. He remembered that at some point, he ended up in the bathroom. At the same time, he had a knife in his hands. He took a knife with me because he wanted to hurt myself. He didn't want to live because he realized that Vera was dead. He didn't want to kill her. After some time, the door to the apartment opened, and his brother and a police officer were inside. After that, he was told to get dressed. He was taken to the police station. He's sorry for what he did. He do not deny that it was his actions that caused Vera's death. He didn't want to kill her. He wanted to apologize to Vera's family. As you have noticed, Vlad has a selective memory. He remembered strangling Vera, but did not remember how he inflicted about 100 injuries on her. It was also unclear how Vera could have punched him in the face and scratched his back while she was lying on her stomach on the floor. During the interrogation, it also became clear how Vlad's brother ended up at the crime scene. After all, he lived in another city. Here's what Vlad told the police about it. He called his brother. He told him about what happened. He told him that Vera wasn't breathing, and his brother told me to call an ambulance and give her CPR. He tried to give her first aid. He tried to give her CPR and cardiac massage. During the investigation, it became known that he called his brother at about midnight and said that he was going to take Vera's life. At the second interrogation, when asked again about the injuries on Vera's body, he replied, "It was probably me who caused those injuries to Vera." He did not count the number of his blows, but these injuries that were found on Vera's body by the expert may have been caused by me. He don't remember how many times he hit her, but he think it's the same number as indicated by the expert. He admit he caused her all the injuries indicated in the report. He wanted silence. He didn't think about her suffering. She screamed and insulted him during their conflict. He didn't enjoy hitting her, but he didn't like her screaming. He wanted her to shut up. He didn't think about her suffering at that time. Vlad Kanyus also said he had consensual intimate relations with Vera that evening. The related charges were eventually dropped. It was difficult to prove the opposite. Police officers and emergency service operators were charged with negligence. It's hard to believe, but they were not suspended from work during the investigation and continued to provide ridiculous justifications. The prosecutor demanded real prison terms for all 5 defendants, but the judge decided otherwise. They received suspended sentences ranging from 1.5 to 2 years. The court also ordered each defendant to pay around $350 to the victims. Simultaneously, the police department had to pay approximately $111,000. The amounts have been converted from the Russian ruble to US dollars for easier understanding. The indictment states that the police officers had access to gasoline and should have taken appropriate measures to resolve the situation, but they did not consider it an urgent task. Both police officers refused to cooperate with the investigation and did not admit guilt. They claimed that when witnesses reported the woman's screams and cries for help, the investigation team was at another address where a man's corpse had been found. We may never know the full truth of what happened that night. Vera was not planning to stay in the apartment and had asked her friend for help with moving, suggesting that Vlad Kanyus may have forced her to consume alcohol when she was unconscious, then fabricated a story to make the event seem unintentional. In the summer of 2022, the court sentenced Vlad Kanyus to 17 years in prison, and he partially admitted his guilt. He was also ordered to pay around $45,000 in compensation. However, this verdict shocked Vera's parents, who planned to appeal, believing the punishment was too lenient. Surprisingly, Vlad Kanyus did not even serve a full year in prison. In November 2023, photos of him in military uniform appeared online, and in April 2023, it became known that he had received a presidential pardon after 6 months of participation in the ongoing armed conflict in Russia. He was also relieved of the obligation to pay any compensation to Vera's parents. Vera's case has caused widespread resonance in Russia, and the news about Vlad Kanyus's pardon has been equally controversial. The press secretary of the Russian president stated that there are specific procedures for granting pardons, including a confession of guilt by the convict and the possibility of redeeming oneself on the battlefield. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. In a heart-wrenching tale of tragedy, we meet Eva Blanco Puig, a young soul taken too soon at just 16 years old. For 18 agonizing years, her story remained shrouded in darkness until the truth, once elusive, finally surfaced through DNA samples, unmasking the face of the perpetrator. For 18 long years, the questions haunted those who loved her. Who could do such a thing? Why was justice so elusive? But the memory of Eva's radiant spirit never faded, as it was for Eva etched in the hearts of those she left behind. And thus, the relentless pursuit of justice for their loved one never ceased. Eva Blanco Puig was born on February 17, 1981, in Spain to Manuel Blanco and Olga Puig. By 1997, the couple was living a quiet and peaceful life, having already settled in Aldehuela, a small municipality of Madrid that was well away from all the bustle of the capital, together with their 3 daughters, Eva, Rebecca, and Maria. Eva, among her closest companions and beloved kin, was often portrayed as a rather quiet girl, yet exuded an enchanting air of mirth and dependability, and was an absolute delight to be around. She also thrived in the realm of athletic pursuits, with her passion for sports illuminating her days with unbridled joy. At school, she found herself embraced by a multitude of admirers for her magnetic charisma and warm-hearted nature that knew no bounds. Eva always set a good example for her younger sisters, and being a responsible girl, she did not give her parents great displeasure as she complied with all the rules that they dictated, with one of them being the curfew that they had always set for her. However, on this fateful day, things did not go as planned. On the afternoon of April 19th, Eva and her friends were playing tennis, enjoying the carefree moments that only youth could offer. But little did they know that this seemingly ordinary afternoon would take a dark and harrowing turn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, being a Saturday, they decided to go to a local disco to cherish their unbreakable bonds of friendship and spend more time with each other, extending it into the late night. Eva had already asked her mother for permission to extend her curfew slightly, and Olga, seeing that her daughter had always been responsible, rewarded her as they agreed that by midnight she should already be back home. The clock struck 11:30 p.m., and little by little, the group bid their farewells, heading home. Among them was Blanco, whose journey home would unfortunately lead her into the shadows of mystery. Accompanied by her friend, Eva ventured towards a vacant lot that served as a shortcut to her home. It was a path she had walked countless times before, but destiny had something else in store for her. At around 11:45 p.m., they parted ways as Blanco took her familiar path through the dark, vacant lot, with no inkling that it would be their last goodbye. As midnight approached, Eva's mother grew restless, her heart burdening with worry as her daughter failed to arrive home. She reached out to Eva's friends, hoping for any clue to her whereabouts, only to be told that everyone had already parted ways, and Eva should have already arrived at home by then. This rang her alarm bells as she alerted her husband, who was a tow truck driver. He then began searching for Eva in the town, together with his nephew, a local police officer, and also with the help of the father of one of Eva's friends. When the clock struck 1 a.m., Blanco's parents reported her disappearance at the local civil guard station. But to their dismay, the officers showed little concern for filing a disappearance report for someone missing just a little over an hour. The guard at the door callously dismissed the seriousness of the situation, claiming that children of her age were all on drugs, and she was probably lying in a doorway or on some sidewalk, clearly implying she was not worth that much attention to them. In the darkness of the night, Blanco's father made a harrowing journey to the local civil guard station up to 15 times. With frustration in his heart, he criticized the institution for their lack of urgency in searching rural roads or utilizing vehicles before sunrise. He accused them of neglect, citing a shortage of gas as their excuse. But the civil guards refuted his claims, defending their customary practice of waiting for a few hours to pass before initiating a search after a missing person report. A father's plea for his daughter's safe return hung in the balance as the truth behind the delay remained shrouded in doubt and despair. As the night deepened, the frantic search for Blanco commenced at 2:30 a.m. Her family, friends, and authorities scoured the streets of the town and the surrounding area, but the civil guard had not yet filed an official missing person report. A missing report was filed at 8 a.m., and the decision to publicize the case was made at noon. Blanco's family reached out to the regional TV station Telemadrid, imploring them for help. At 9 a.m., Eva's lifeless body had been discovered by two elderly residents, 6 kilometers away from Algueta, near a road construction site between Cobeña and Belvis de Jarama. The area was known to be frequented by young couples seeking privacy inside their cars. Initially, a dreadful accident was suspected, with the possibility that she might have been run over by a car. However, when the civil guard arrived, the horrifying truth emerged. Blanco, lying face down on the ground, had been mercilessly stabbed multiple times while desperately trying to escape her assailant. The clothes she wore on the day of her disappearance, a pair of jeans, a dark sweater, and mountain boots, clung to her lifeless form, with only one sleeve of her jacket missing, hinting at a sinister struggle. The investigators believed that both Blanco and her killer had arrived at the scene in a vehicle, but heavy rain during the night had erased any tire tracks or crucial forensic evidence. Despite the challenging circumstances, the investigators discovered faint footprints from Blanco and a foreboding clue of footprints of a man wearing size 42 moccasins, providing a faint glimmer of hope in their pursuit of justice for the innocent soul lost. The civil guard notified Blanco's family of the discovery at 3:30 p.m. The news caused commotion in the town of just 12,300 people at the time, with no recent instances of violent crime. At around 7 p.m., 200 people gathered silently before Blanco's home to condemn her murder. Her funeral was held on the 23rd of April and was attended by 2,000 people. In a devastating revelation from the autopsy report, Eva endured a horrifying fate, suffering 19 stab wounds to her back, leading to her tragic demise due to blood loss around 4 a.m. The murder weapon, a Navaja-style knife between 8 and 10 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide, became a terrifying instrument of her torment. The first stab occurred while she was still in a vehicle, while the subsequent ones followed as she desperately tried to run up a slope beside the road. Many of the wounds, particularly those on her ear and the back of her head, were distressingly deemed passionate in nature, adding to the brutality of the crime. Among the horrifying details, the first injury stood out, deep and potentially fatal, even without the additional wounds inflicted later. The tragedy did not end there, as the evidence revealed the heartbreaking violation of Blanco's innocence. The presence of the same man's bodily fluid was discovered in her mouth, genitals, and underwear, testimony to a heinous act that defies comprehension. The discovery of a red fiber in her mouth, identified as common car upholstery by the Catalonia Textile Museum and Documentation Center, confirmed that Blanco had been in a vehicle after her abduction. These shocking details painted a heart-rending picture of the unspeakable pain and suffering endured by this innocent soul in her final moments. Due to the body being found dressed and showing no apparent signs of violence, both the coroner and officers initially speculated that the sexual encounter may have been consensual, leading to a fatal altercation afterward. In stark contrast, Eva's grieving parents firmly believed that their daughter had been abducted, sexually assaulted at knife point, and then murdered to prevent her from seeking justice for the heinous act. The civil guard anticipated that the case would be closed after a short investigation, with their prevailing theory pointing towards a single individual known to Blanco. Allegedly, this person approached her in a car, offering a ride that she accepted, leading them to the secluded construction site, a well-known lover's lane, where the tragic events unfolded. Blanco's ex-boyfriend, residing in Fuente El Saz, who had recently separated from her, became an initial suspect, but he was cleared following police questioning. Subsequently, the focus of the investigation shifted towards adult men known to Blanco's family, individuals that she might have trusted to board their vehicle. As the investigation progressed, the case proved to be more intricate than initially thought, and the likelihood of a stranger's involvement could not be ruled out. Blanco's close acquaintances vehemently maintained that she would never willingly enter a vehicle with someone she did not know, leading them to believe that she had been coerced into the car under duress. Further complicating matters, several residents connected the incident to a suspicious blue vehicle observed in the area at around 12 a.m. One of the car's occupants was described as a fair-haired male, estimated to be roughly 20 years of age. Unfortunately, nobody thought to write down the car's license plate number, which could have been an essential piece of evidence in the investigation. The discovery of an unidentified male bodily fluid on the young woman's body and clothes during the investigation was concealed from Blanco's family and the public, as the officers secretly collected DNA samples from her male relatives and acquaintances to compare with the fluid's DNA. Eva's father's sample was obtained from a discarded cigarette he smoked while drinking coffee and discussing the case with the civil guard officers, while others were surreptitiously taken during unrelated blood alcohol content tests or from the cups and glasses they used in bars. Despite not finding any matches, the civil guard remained steadfast in their belief that the perpetrator was an adult male residing in Al-Hit or a nearby town. The pursuit of justice continued in the shadows while the heartbroken family yearned for answers that instead created more questions. 8 months after the tragic incident, Blanco's mother found in her daughter's room 2 hidden notebooks that were labeled 95 to 96 and 96 to 97. Within these pages, Blanco had meticulously chronicled her daily experiences until the day of her murder. The entries predominantly featured the names Eva and Miguel, referring to her ex-boyfriend, written repeatedly in various pen colors. However, just 2 pages before the final one, the names Eva and Miguel were replaced with Eva and 34310. Despite numerous efforts to decipher the significance of the number, all attempts proved futile. Speculations surrounding the number range from it being related to the phone code of Spain, which is 34, and the postal code of the town, which is 110, to yet again being associated with a pager number from a Coca-Cola promotion. At that time, the mystery of the number remained unsolved, leaving Blanco's loved ones and investigators haunted by the enigmatic clue. Upon learning that his DNA had been compared to the fluids found in his daughter's body and that he had been excluded as a suspect, Blanco's father initiated a campaign to rally other residents of Al-Hiti for voluntary DNA samples to aid in apprehending his daughter's killer. With the support of Mayor Jesus Herrera Fernandez, an official announcement was made in November 1999, urging all male residents over 16 years old, estimated to be 5,000 individuals, to voluntarily provide their hair or saliva samples. However, Spanish judicial organizations unanimously rejected the proposition, deeming it simple-minded, disproportionate, useless, and potentially stigmatizing for those who chose not to provide their DNA without a court order, which was their legal right to do so. They also believed that the culprit would obviously not volunteer to provide their sample. Nevertheless, Blanco's father managed to collect 2,013 samples from the residents of Alget and nearby towns, depositing them at the local courthouse until further decisions were made. The examining magistrate of the case sought a report from Madrid's chief prosecutor to assess the legal feasibility of such tests. The response that was issued on March 30, 2000, emphasized that testing should be limited to individuals who could be considered suspicious based on the investigation rather than merely volunteers. Consequently, only samples from 45 people were tested, including 12 relatives from Eva's father's and mother's sides, her acquaintances, and individuals with a prior criminal record, with a particular focus on cases involving sexual misconduct and knife violence. The search for justice persisted amidst the legal complexities and the never-ending determination of those who sought the truth behind Eva's tragic fate. Despite the case hitting a standstill, the homicide group of the Civil Guard remained resolute, never allowing it to fade into oblivion. Over the years, each new member and commander took it upon themselves to revisit the case file, hoping to bring a fresh perspective. The investigation expanded beyond borders, with information sought from various law enforcement agencies, including the Ertzaintza and the FBI. A DNA specialist from the University of Santiago de Compostela re-examined the evidence, revealing that the DNA belonged to a man of non-European descent. Over the years, the number of individuals investigated soared to 1,503, including 208 men from Alget and neighboring towns who voluntarily underwent DNA testing, even encompassing criminals on leave during the time of the murder. A new examining magistrate allowed the opening and checking of the 2013 envelopes containing the names of the volunteers from 1999, but not the testing of all DNA samples. La Sexta's investigative show, La Sexta Columna, aired an episode about the case titled Eva, a Cold Case, on April 26, 2013, that featured interviews with Blanco's loved ones and experts. Psychologist and criminologist Vicente Garrido proposed the theory of a stalker as the likely perpetrator, challenging the Civil Guard's secret boyfriend hypothesis. The lack of defensive wounds suggested threats, and the criminal could be of low intelligence, uneducated, and emotionally immature, given that he was seeking intimacy with a teenager instead of a woman his age. He might have had no family, as they would have noticed his late-night activities, and the possibility of him continuing his crimes elsewhere or being in prison for other attacks was considered. Following the program's broadcast, a woman came forward to authorities reporting that she had seen a suspicious man at the road construction site around 8 a.m. before Eva's body had been found. The man appeared disheveled, walking in the rain without an umbrella, looking like he hadn't slept through the night, and was searching for something before getting into a white Renault 18. The Civil Guard considered her testimony reliable, as other witnesses had also reported a Renault 18 over the years, which matched the fiber found on Blanco's body. On October 28, 2013, a facial composite of the suspect, made in collaboration with the new witness, was released. The man was described to be between 35 and 40 years old in 1997, around 1.7 to 1.8 meters tall, corpulent with his weight between 75 to 80 kilograms, with short spiky brown hair, a square and hardened face, and dark sunken eyes. He was said to be dressed in a white shirt and a V-neck sweater, and he drove a white Renault 18 with red upholstery. To gather clues, a confidential phone number and email address were set up, resulting in 100 emails received by January 1, 2014. By the end of 2013, a breakthrough in the investigation revealed that the DNA from the fluids pointed to a man of North African descent. The Civil Guard petitioned the 300 North African men who lived in Algete in 1997 for voluntary samples. A former neighbor of Blanco's, now residing in southern France, shared a remarkable genetic match with the killer, indicating a possible sibling relationship. Further analysis of a brother living in Murcia, who had never lived in Algete, yielded an identical match, leading to a European arrest warrant for the third brother, Ahmed Chel Gersh. On October 1, 2015, Ahmed was apprehended outside his workplace in Villeurbanne, France, in a joint operation involving the Civil Guard and the French Gendarmerie. Ahmed Chel Gersh, born on March 1, 1963, in Taza, Morocco, was 34 years old at the time of the murder. He married a 20-year-old Spanish woman in Madrid in 1989 and obtained Spanish citizenship in the 1990s. They went on to have children, and at the time of Blanco's murder, Chel's wife was 5 months pregnant. They never appeared as residents of Algete since they lived in a caravan provided by Chel's employer at a plant nursery where he worked as a delivery man. Their residence, located next to the Puente del Retamar Road, was approximately 4 kilometers away from the crime scene. In 1999, the Chel family moved to France, where, although they continued to be listed as married in Spain, they had separated amicably. Chel remarried to a 24-year-old Moroccan student in Villeurbanne in 2003, settling in a village approximately 20 kilometers from the Swiss border, and went on to have children as well. In France, he worked as a welder for a farm machinery company, but his relationship with co-workers was reportedly troubled. When confronted with the DNA evidence, Chel claimed that 2 unidentified men brought him to Blanco's body and forced him to touch himself over her body. However, his ex-wife contradicted this account by informing journalists that Ahmed had actually gone out with his brothers, as they often did during the weekends. She revealed that one of the brothers had disclosed that they were at the same disco as Blanco and had spoken to her after she argued with her ex-boyfriend. While Blanco initially left the disco with the brothers, she returned inside with her friends around 11 p.m. Surprisingly, Chel's ex-wife stated that neither she nor the brothers had ever been interrogated by the police or the Civil Guard during the investigation. While she denied any mistreatment by Chel, she later admitted to his aggressive behavior when under the influence of alcohol. Descriptions from former co-workers and female customers portrayed him as unsociable, aggressive when drunk, and inappropriate towards women. Blanco's family had minimal interaction with Chel's brothers at most and had never even met Chel himself. On October 5, 2015, Chel attempted to harm himself in his cell, but agreed to be deported to Spain for trial 2 days later. At the preliminary hearing on October 13, he declined to make a statement but provided a DNA sample. Charged with murder, sexual assault, and illegal detention, he was held in Soto del Rio prison pending trial as the DNA testing confirmed his involvement. On October 19th, Chel's defense unsuccessfully requested his release pending trial, arguing a lack of evidence besides DNA and that the Civil Guard's hypothesis over the past 18 years suggests that Eva willingly got into a car with someone she knew, engaging in consensual intercourse before her tragic death. Therefore, they believed that there was no sense in charging Chel with sexual assault. Due to the idea of Blanco willingly accepting a ride from the Moroccan, given her friend's assurance that she would never get into a car with a stranger, also made them believe he had no involvement. Chel's lawyer argued that Blanco would never willingly associate with the Moroccan due to alleged neo-Nazi sympathies evidenced in her diaries, linking her to the investigation's early focus on the neo-Nazi group, Bases Autonomous. Chel's first wife sparked another conspiracy theory during an interview with TVE's La Mañana, suggesting the involvement of several people known to the Chel family and hinting at those responsible for the murder. She claimed that Chel returned home between 10 o'clock and 11 p.m. that night, citing her pregnancy as the reason he wouldn't stay out late. According to her, he mentioned being mugged by some boys but didn't report it due to fear. In January 2016, prison psychiatric support lifted the anti-suicide measures from Chell, who claimed he was forced to pleasure himself on Blanco, denying any penetration, but was unable to explain how his bodily fluid was found in her genital area. On January 29, 2016, Chell was discovered dead in his cell, having taken his own life by hanging himself with his shoelaces. The prosecution was officially concluded on February 15, 2016. Eva's family, while finding some closure in knowing who had murdered their daughter, felt disappointed that he did not face the consequences for his wicked deeds, but believed that justice would hopefully be served in the afterlife. Eva Blanco Puig had dreams of becoming an architect and had a passion for drawing. She was an ardent fan of Bon Jovi and also African music. Her sensitivity and sincerity created strong bonds with her friends, and her strong laughter became a defining trait of her personality. She was a responsible and caring older sister, always setting a positive example to her younger sisters. The story of Eva Blanco echoes through time, a story of loss, pain, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As we remember her, we also remember the strength of a community united, seeking answers and closure for the young girl whose life was taken too soon. Families held on to the hope that one day the truth would emerge. This dramatic narrative weaves together fates marked by love and loss, courage and despair. Follow the unfolding events to discover whether the families will achieve retribution and justice. Jorge's latest victim was his new girlfriend, whose name was Carmelinga Alanis Campira. Born on December 10, 1985, she had a profound love for animals, particularly cats. Her passion for animals initially led her to pursue veterinary studies at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. However, due to challenges with practical training, she couldn't complete her veterinary education. Consequently, she shifted her focus to philology, determined to continue her academic and professional journey. At the age of 31, Campira was living in a middle-class neighborhood in the Santo Domingo colony in Mexico. She shared her home with her two sons, aged 12 and 3, as well as her brother Gabriel. Campira's first child was born to her late husband, Juan Carlos, who tragically passed away from cancer in 2012. Despite the adversity, Campira gave birth to her daughter a few months after her husband's death and devoted herself entirely to raising her children. Financially, the family relied on a pension and rental income from apartments. While Campira shared a close relationship with her mother Margarita, she confided more in her aunt Sandra, who was both her confidant and close friend. Though her life was dedicated to her children, Campira harbored a secret desire for romantic love, longing for a partner who would accept and love her children. In the realm of social media, Campira found a glimmer of hope in Jorge, a 38-year-old man. Jorge, introducing himself as Joy Draga, portrayed himself as a widower residing in Mexico City. His social media page featured various photos depicting his life, including a poignant image captioned, "Rest in peace, my love." Yet, amidst this seemingly normal facade, a mystery lingered. Who was Yang, whose death Jorge referenced on his page? This enigmatic mention of Yang added layers of intrigue to an already compelling narrative, hinting at hidden secrets waiting to be unraveled. As the story unfolds, one cannot help but feel the palpable anticipation of delving into the depths of these mysteries, each clue serving as a tantalizing glimpse into a complex web of secrets and unexpected revelations. This is the story of Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez, born on January 5, 1978 in Mexico City. Jorge kept his childhood and teenage years veiled in secrecy. In various interviews, he hinted at constant conflicts with his caring mother, while his weak-willed father remained passive amidst their quarrels. These tumultuous family dynamics likely contributed to Jorge's emotional isolation and the eventual formation of his aggressive and unstable personality. At an early age, Jorge decided to distance himself from his parents and embarked on a journey around the world. He took up temporary jobs that allowed him to traverse various states of Mexico, working as a waiter in bars across Mexico City's Rosa and Cona districts. He also relied on tips from tourists in the Villadó and Cuac districts, known for their vibrant infrastructure and entertainment options. It was during this time that Jorge delved into criminal activities. In 2010, Jorge was apprehended on theft charges and sentenced to 4 years in prison. However, due to it being his first offense, the judge granted him bail. Little did anyone anticipate that this leniency would unleash a potential criminal who would later become one of Mexico's most wanted fugitives. Following his release, Jorge crossed paths with Adriana Ramos, whom he fell deeply in love with. Initially, Jorge showered Adriana with affection, but as the relationship progressed, his violent tendencies surfaced. Within months, Adriana became a victim of Jorge's physical abuse. Fearing for her safety, Adriana resolved to end the relationship. One fateful night, Jorge's rage reached a boiling point. He viciously attacked Adriana, dragging her down the stairs by her hair, breaking her nose, and rendering her unconscious. Upon regaining consciousness, Adriana found Jorge threatening to ignite the gas in the kitchen, intending to end both their lives if she dared to leave him. Despite the terror, Adriana summoned the strength to resist. In a desperate struggle for survival, she fought back, eventually managing to free herself from Jorge's grip. Armed with a hammer, she fought off her assailant, miraculously pushing him out of the apartment and out of her life forever. In retrospect, Adriana realized that her courageous act not only liberated her from a violent relationship, but potentially saved her from an even grimmer fate. In 2011, Jorge once again managed to evade punishment. Similar to his previous charge, he was released on bail immediately. Soon after, he found a new victim in the form of an 18-year-old girl named Yang Kyung-marie Hbga, a Korean national. Yang shared a strong bond with her mother, Monica, and her sister, Anna. Anna, being passionate about sports and socializing, led a vibrant life, balancing her studies in psychology with work at a local restaurant. She resided in the lively Roma colony, an upscale neighborhood in Mexico City. Jorge and Yang crossed paths on one of Jorge's shifts at a nearby bar. There was an instant spark between them, leading to a whirlwind romance. However, beneath the surface, their relationship was marred by violence. Despite frequent conflicts, Jorge and Yang persisted in their tumultuous affair. At the age of 19, Yang made the decision to assert her independence from her family, opting to move to the city with Jorge. However, this change of scenery only exacerbated their issues. Jorge's behavior became increasingly controlling, monitoring Yang's every move, even calling her incessantly at work and limiting her interactions with friends. Gradually, Yang realized she had become ensnared in Jorge's web of dominance and aggression. Desperate to maintain appearances, she remained silent about the domestic abuse, severing communication with her family to spare them from worry. Only her sister Anna and a handful of close friends were privy to the torment she endured behind closed doors. Despite her family's pleas for her to leave Jorge, Yang remained entangled in the toxic relationship, unable to break free from the cycle of abuse. Jorge and Yang's tumultuous relationship was marked by a cycle of attempts to break free, followed by a return to the toxic embrace of Jorge's manipulation. Despite her best efforts to leave him, Yang found herself ensnared by her own fears and vulnerabilities, unable to break the chains that bound her to Jorge. As time passed, Yang underwent a profound transformation, her once cheerful demeanor giving way to deep-seated depression as she desperately sought to please Jorge at any cost. Their relationship grew increasingly volatile, punctuated by episodes of violence and control. One fateful day in August 2014, following yet another explosive argument, Yang made the courageous decision to leave Jorge and seek refuge with her parents. Encouraged by a concerned friend, she even contemplated involving the authorities to put an end to her suffering. However, the grip of Jorge's manipulation proved too strong, and Yang soon found herself drawn back into his web. Tragically, just 2 weeks later, on the morning of September 21st, Yang's lifeless body was discovered in their apartment. Jorge claimed to have found her hanging in the bedroom, her body bearing the telltale signs of bruising. According to his testimony, he had left the house the previous day, leaving Yang asleep after her shift at the bar. Upon his return the next morning, he allegedly discovered her lifeless form and promptly notified the authorities and Yang's family, of the tragic turn of events. Despite Georges' claims, suspicion shrouded the circumstances of Yang's death, leaving lingering questions about what truly transpired in the final moments of her life. As authorities began their investigation, Yang's family grappled with the devastating loss of their beloved daughter and sister. Their grief compounded by the shadow of doubt cast over the official account of events. The devastating news of Yang's untimely death sent shockwaves through her family, prompting her sister Monica and niece Anna to rush to the scene. As they arrived at Yang's residence, they were met with a flurry of activity, with police officers and criminologists already on site, meticulously processing the grim aftermath. Their anguish deepened as they witnessed the solemn procession of Yang's lifeless body being carefully removed from the bed. Georges, Yang's husband, recounted his panicked attempts to aid his deceased wife, his distress palpable in the air. However, their anguish was compounded by the denial of access to the apartment, as they were informed that an ongoing investigation necessitated the preservation of evidence. Helpless, they could only watch as Yang's body, shrouded in a sheet, was solemnly carried out of the house. Amidst their grief, the family grappled with the perplexing narrative of suicide put forth by the authorities. While detectives leaned towards this conclusion, citing the position of the body and Georges' purported account, Yang's loved ones vehemently contested this theory. Their skepticism was fueled by the absence of any discernible signs of distress in Yang's demeanor prior to her death, leaving them incredulous at the notion that she would take her own life. Moreover, upon closer inspection of the body, they noted bruising on Yang's legs, casting doubt on the initial assessment of suicide by hanging. As they embarked on the somber task of identifying Yang's body and navigating the bureaucratic formalities, the family found themselves thrust into a harrowing journey, seeking answers amidst the fog of grief and uncertainty. Jorge's attempt to rationalize his actions fell flat, as he claimed that the body slipped from his grasp, an explanation met with skepticism by Yang's sister, Monica. Doubts surrounding Georges' narrative deepened upon hearing testimonies from Yang's friends, who shed light on the tumultuous dynamics within the relationship. According to them, Georges exhibited controlling and jealous behavior, incessantly calling Yang at work to monitor her every move. Anna, Yang's sister, recounted a noticeable shift in Yang's demeanor since the inception of her relationship with Jorge, noting her gradual estrangement from the family. Despite mounting suspicions and testimonies highlighting Jorge's volatile nature, the police seemed uninterested in pursuing further inquiries, swiftly closing the case by attributing Yang's death to suicide. This decision left Yang's family reeling with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of injustice. Compounding their anguish, the suggestion to cremate Yang's body dashed any hopes of conducting comprehensive forensic investigations. Tormented by suspicions of Jorge's involvement, Yang's mother reluctantly consented to cremation, forgoing the chance to substantiate her suspicions. Jorge's conspicuous absence at the funeral, coupled with his ostensible display of grief through a tattoo of a broken heart, rang hollow in the eyes of Yang's grieving family. His subsequent withdrawal from contact with Yang's relatives only fueled their suspicions further, exacerbating their collective anguish. Yang's tragic demise reverberated throughout the family, plunging them into a maelstrom of grief, loneliness, and despair. Monica, unable to cope with the overwhelming pain of loss, sought solace in alcohol and cigarettes, further isolating herself from her husband and remaining family members. The once harmonious household now suffocated under the weight of sorrow, with tensions escalating to the point where one of Yang's sisters felt compelled to leave, unable to bear witness to the unraveling of their familial bonds in the wake of tragedy. Yang, equipped with an education in culinary arts, harbored dreams of launching her own business. However, her untimely demise shattered these aspirations, plunging the family into a downward spiral. Despite grappling with grief, Monica, Yang's mother, refused to accept the official narrative surrounding her daughter's death. Maternal instincts and a quest for justice fueled Monica's determination to uncover the truth. Yang's zest for life contradicted the notion that she took her own life. Monica found no solace in the details: bruises marring her daughter's body, the absence of a suicide note, and strands of hair missing from her scalp. Convinced of foul play, Monica embarked on a personal crusade for justice. Taking matters into her own hands, Monica procured surveillance footage from Yang's residence, revealing her husband, Jorge, as the last person to see Yang alive. Armed with this revelation, Monica enlisted legal aid and secured the services of a private medical examiner to reassess the circumstances surrounding Yang's demise. The re-examination unearthed startling revelations, challenging the initial findings. Forensic evidence pointed to a violent death. Marks on Yang's neck indicated strangulation, not hanging. The scene had been meticulously staged to conceal the truth. Bruises on Yang's hands and nails hinted at a struggle against her assailant. Questioning the negligence of law enforcement became paramount. Monica's relentless pursuit of truth spanned 7 months, unveiling a series of oversights and incompetence within the investigative process. It emerged that Yang had previously sought police intervention due to Jorge's violence, but her pleas were disregarded. Monica's quest for justice became a beacon of hope amidst the shadows of despair. In her relentless pursuit, she unraveled a web of negligence, exposing systemic failures that had previously shrouded Yang's tragic demise. Through unwavering determination, Monica sought to rectify the injustices that had befallen her daughter. Monica's journey for justice evolved into an exhaustive quest to unravel the depths of Jorge's depravity. She unearthed damning evidence linking Jorge not only to his father, but also to individuals involved in the case's investigation. The pieces of the puzzle began to coalesce, painting a chilling portrait of Jorge's true nature. Driven by her unwavering maternal love and an unyielding commitment to truth, Monica tirelessly pursued justice. Despite facing skepticism and resistance, she refused to be silenced. Each roadblock only fueled her determination to hold Jorge accountable for his actions. As Monica delved deeper into the investigation, she uncovered disturbing truths about Jorge's past. His connections to criminal elements cast a sinister shadow over Yang's tragic demise, challenging the initial narrative of suicide propagated by the authorities. The prosecutor's office, instead of offering support, met Monica's demands with callous indifference. Advised to abandon her pursuit of justice and seek psychological help, Monica stood her ground, undeterred by the dismissive attitude of those in power. Yang's story transcended the confines of tragedy, becoming a testament to the enduring power of love and the relentless pursuit of truth. In 2016, Jorge's heinous actions claimed yet another victim, thrusting Monica into a new realm of darkness and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Campira's initial infatuation with Jorge gave way to a horrifying realization as Monica's investigation unearthed chilling details about his past. The facade of charm and charisma crumbled, revealing the monstrous depths of Jorge's true identity. Campira found herself ensnared in a web of deceit and danger, her once bright future overshadowed by the looming specter of Jorge's malevolence. As the end of 2016 approached, the anticipation of New Year's festivities filled the air. Yet for Margarita and her family, it marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. On December 28th, Margarita had an encounter with Jorge, a day that would later be etched in her memory with sorrow. It was a day like any other, as Campira, Jorge, and her grandchildren embarked on a trip to Acapulco to spend the holidays with Margarita and her husband. The atmosphere was festive, brimming with laughter and the promise of joyful moments together. As the days passed, Jorge, with his persuasive charm, managed to convince Campira to extend their stay in Acapulco. Reluctantly, Margarita agreed to take care of the children for a few more days, allowing Campira and Jorge to enjoy an extended holiday until January 5th. Little did they know that these seemingly innocent decisions would lead to unfathomable tragedy. 3 days after their departure, the unthinkable occurred. Campira's vibrant presence was suddenly extinguished, her lifeless body discovered under circumstances that would forever haunt her loved ones. The last exchange between mother and daughter occurred on December 30th, leaving Margarita with a lingering sense of unease. Despite her attempts to reach Campira on New Year's Eve, the silence on the other end of the line only deepened her worry. With each unanswered call and unreturned message, Margarita's concern grew into a gnawing fear. It was unlike Campira to be out of touch, especially during such a celebratory time. Despite Jorge's attempts to quell her apprehensions by attributing Campira's absence to a quarrel and a night out with friends, Margarita's maternal instincts screamed otherwise. Driven by an insatiable need for answers, Margarita reached out to a trusted family friend, hoping to unravel the mystery shrouding her daughter's whereabouts. Their visit to Campira's home was met with Jorge's unconvincing explanation, claiming that Campira was asleep and unavailable to meet. Yet, his demeanor betrayed an underlying tension, leaving Margarita with a sinking feeling that Jorge was concealing vital information. As the pieces of this sinister puzzle began to fall into place, Margarita realized that the truth lay buried beneath layers of deception. With determination, fueled by grief and a mother's unwavering love, she resolved to uncover the dark secrets veiled by Jorge's facade. Little did she know that her quest for justice would unearth a web of lies, deceit, and unspeakable horrors, altering the course of their lives forever. On December 31st, between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., Jorge brutally murdered Campira by strangling her. Before committing the crime, he brutally beat her with an unknown object, causing many injuries on her face and body. To create a false scene that she committed suicide, he cut off a lock of her hair, placed her lifeless body on the bed, covered it with a blanket, and turned on the gas stove. Jorge even placed a portrait of Campira's deceased ex-husband in her hands to create the impression that her death was due to the memory of him. At about 8:30 p.m., after packing his things, he left the house. On the night of January 1st, 2017, Margarita could not contact her daughter to wish her a happy new year, so she called her son Gabriel, who was in the same city as Campira. When Gabriel arrived at her house, he immediately smelled a strong smell of gas. After turning off all the gas stoves, he went looking for Campira, and when he discovered her lifeless body on the sofa, he was horrified to see bruises from the brutal beating on her face. When Gabriel pulled back the blanket, he was horrified to see Campira lying motionless, wearing only underwear, and her body covered in bruises. Many details immediately attracted his attention. There were drops of blood around Campira, even though her body and underwear were clean as if she had just taken a shower. Additionally, there was no longer a lock of hair on her head, which was especially strange for Gabriel because Campira always took good care of her hair and never cut it like that. Stunned, Gabriel immediately reported the incident to the police and then contacted his mother. For Margarita, this news was a real shock, like a sharp blade piercing her heart, dividing her life into before and after. Not only did her world collapse, but so did the world of Campira's children and their entire families. Minutes after Gabriel's call, a team of paramedics and police arrived at the house. After declaring Campira's death, they sealed off the scene and restricted access for relatives of the deceased. The Campira family, overwhelmed by grief, could not believe what had happened. Their eyes reflected not only pain but also a glimmer of hope that justice would be served. The bruises on Campira's body, the absence of a lock of hair, and the crime scene were not consistent with the theory that she had committed suicide. The police began meticulously examining the scene, recording every detail. They have a difficult task ahead of them in understanding the circumstances of Campira's death to make a clear line. Finding the truth and distinguishing between truth and lies, as well as finding the guilty, is a complex process. At the initial stage, based on the first results of the autopsy, the police hypothesized suicide. According to their theory, Campira wanted to end his life by turning on the gas to poison himself. However, the deceased's family firmly rejected this theory. They couldn't believe that a cheerful young woman who had overcome the pain of losing her husband and was a loving mother of 2 children could do such a thing. Their belief in Campira's violent death was further reinforced by the absence of locks of hair that could not be found in the house. Convinced of their suspicions, Campira's family demanded a more thorough investigation. Unlike Yang's case, this time the authorities did not ignore their requests. A second forensic examination confirmed their fears. Campira had been strangled and the fake suicide scene was just a clever disguise. This is evidenced by marks on the trachea and neck, as well as bruises indicating beatings and the absence of locks of hair. After confirming the crime, Koyan police began an active investigation. Campira's aunt, Sandra, found support from the deputy public prosecutor and ensured the case was transferred to the prosecutor's office for investigation. However, progress in the investigation has been slow and painful. Just a short time later, Sandra was called back to the prosecutor's office, where she was informed that she and her brother Gabriel could be plaintiffs in the case. The children of the deceased woman, left without a mother, were placed in the care of their grandmother immediately after the tragedy. They have been transferred to a new school. The family tries to protect them from horrifying memories and help them adapt to the new reality, but time cannot heal such wounds. The Campira family is looking forward to news, but the investigation is at a standstill. It was only after 2.5 months that they were allowed into the apartment where Campira's body was found to collect his belongings and possibly find clues. They discovered Campira's laptop in the apartment, but were disappointed to see that all the information on it had been erased, leaving no trace. Luckily, Campira's iPad was protected by a password they remembered. The last photos she took before her death were a big shock to her family. In one photo, Campira lies peacefully next to Jorge on the sofa where her body was later found. Other photos showed Jorge, including one of him holding a box of skulls that was later found in the apartment's freezer, and with one hand strangling her. In a desk drawer, they found sketches of the tattoo Jorge planned to get. These photos only increased the family's suspicions about Jorge's involvement in the crime. The new evidence found in the apartment is truly a big discovery for the Campira family. Campira's peaceful photos contrast with Jorge's macabre photos, and the horror tattoo sketches leave no doubt about his involvement in this tragedy. Campira's aunt, not resigned to the government's inaction, created a social networking site called Justice for All. On the page, she posted photos of Jorge, asking users to share any information about him, his location, or his connection to the crime. When she came across this page, Monica, Yang's mother, who was found dead in 2014 in similar circumstances, was horrified to realize that Jorge was the one who killed her daughter. She immediately contacted Campira's family and shared her story. Margarita and Monica, two mothers, are linked by tragic fate. Their daughters died 2 years apart, allegedly by the same person. In Yang's case, as is well known, the police not only failed to investigate the case properly, but also failed to consider the possibility of violent death. During their own investigation, the two mothers discover a horrifying common denominator. In both cases, Jorge acted according to the same script. He makes girls fall in love with him, isolates them from family and friends, then kills them in cold blood, making it appear they committed suicide. One of the key elements in his sinister plan was to cut off a lock of each victim's hair. This horrifying detail connects both cases, hinting at Jorge's pathological obsession with his victim's hair. His motives remain a mystery, but his propensity for violence and manipulation leaves no doubt about his involvement in these deaths. Sometime later, the deceased woman's family was able to obtain footage from a surveillance camera installed at a neighbor's house. The footage shows Jorge entering the house and then 6 hours later rushing out, taking several things with him. It was determined that Jorge was home from 5:05 to 8:30 p.m. on December 31st, which coincided with the conclusions of forensic experts on Sierra's death. The discovery of these videos completely changed the course of the investigation, making Jorge the main suspect. From that point on, investigators began actively searching for him, but by that time, he had disappeared without a trace. Jorge quit all his jobs, stopped being active on social networks, and ceased communicating with his friends. It was clear he was in hiding, which further increased suspicions about him. The Mexico City Prosecutor General's office put its full force behind the investigation, realizing Jorge was a threat to society and possibly his new girlfriend could be the next victim. However, the search for Jorge yielded no results after several months. The Mexican police turned to international help, placing Jorge on the international wanted list and expanding the search to over 100 countries. Thanks to the efforts of Campira and Yang's mothers, these cases were widely publicized in the media, and Jorge quickly earned the nickname Lady Killer. As soon as the story of Jorge's crimes became public, other women who were also his victims but had escaped began contacting the police to expose his brutal behavior. These women shared eerily similar stories about how their romantic relationships with Jorge turned into nightmares of physical and verbal abuse. One of Jorge's ex-girlfriends, Adriana, shared a heartbreaking story of abuse and testified to the police about Sira's death. Sira's case highlighted a pattern where both she and Yang had a lock of hair missing. Both were said to have taken a shower before their deaths, and both were in a relationship with Jorge. It seemed that this man had committed a terrible crime. During the investigation, more gruesome details were revealed, such as the public learning that Jorge had been released on bail in 2009, sparking a wave of anger. Many realized that if he had been detained sooner, these young women might still be alive. While Campira and Yang's families continued their relentless fight for justice on social media, a page dedicated to their memory gathered more than 13,000 subscribers. They united to demand justice for the women who died. 10 months after his escape, on October 24, 2017, Jorge paid the price for his actions. His arrest came suddenly during a raid by the National Civil Police in the Guatemalan city of Livingston. Guards patrolling the streets noticed a suspicious man who looked like a homeless person. Simple paperwork and fingerprint checks shocked them. This man was on the international wanted list with a red danger level. Jorge was immediately taken to the Guatemalan capital's immigration center for preventive measures and detained. Central American authorities immediately contacted their Mexican counterparts and initiated extradition proceedings. According to Guatemalan Police Chief Pablo Castillo, Jorge had been hiding under a bridge in the west of his country of birth, living on the streets and surviving thanks to the charity of kind travelers. The very next day, October 25th, he was taken to the border with Mexico, to the city of Chiapas, where he was handed over to the staff of the Criminal Investigation Agency after going through a two-way border zone. Jorge was finally brought to justice in Mexico City. When Jorge appeared in court to answer for his crimes, one of the reporters tried to question him, but instead of answers, he only heard clear denials. Jorge claimed he felt guilty, but he said he knew nothing about the charges against him. On October 26th, Jorge was taken to court for preventive measures. He was charged with the murder of Campira. During the trial, the prosecution presented irrefutable evidence of Jorge's involvement in the crime. The investigation showed that he not only mercilessly strangled the victim, but also brutally beat her, inflicting multiple blows with an unknown object. He was also convicted of theft and his possible involvement in the death of his ex-girlfriend Yang. Despite irrefutable evidence, procedural arguments, and testimony from witnesses, Jorge's lawyers gave a new version, claiming their client was suffering from a mental disorder and requested psychological treatment. After carefully considering all the arguments, the judge turned to Jorge and his lawyer, asking how long it would take to conduct a psychological examination. The defendant's lawyer, after consulting with his client, requested that Jorge attend all court hearings. After thoroughly studying the arguments of both parties and all the documents related to the case, the judge made a decision. Acknowledging that the prosecutor's office had provided enough evidence to hold Jorge criminally responsible for the crime of femicide, the court also decided to continue the investigative trial and allow 4 months to search for new evidence. During this time, Jorge was taken into custody and placed in the pre-trial detention center. Even though Jorge was arrested and found guilty by the court, the families of Campira and Yang still faced a long and difficult trial ahead. The defense used all kinds of legal loopholes to delay the trial for years, including filing a request for the habeas corpus procedure to claim that Jorge's rights had been violated. The prosecutor's office had to engage in a difficult struggle with Jorge's lawyers, who tried their best to protect their client from conviction. In August 2019, an intermediary hearing was held in the form of oral proceedings. Jorge's lawyer requested to exclude from the case videos showing him entering and leaving Sira's house on the day she was murdered. They argued that the videos were just fragments from 30 hours of footage from the crime scene and could not be evidence of their client's guilt. The video was obtained from Campira's neighbors, who gave it to the victim's family, and the family turned it over to the police for investigation. However, the original videos were lost, and the copies recorded on a disc were taken to court. Jorge's lawyer claimed that the Mexico City prosecutor's office withheld this evidence until the hearing date and argued that the video should not be used as evidence. The supervising judge, after hearing the defendant's arguments, the prosecutor's office, and the testimony of Campira's friends and neighbors, refuted the defense attorney's petition. 2 more witness statements were not admissible as evidence, but their content was considered by the court. The case was referred to the court, and Jorge had the right to appeal if convicted, which allowed him to present similar arguments. While the Campira case was ongoing in court, the Yang family fought their own battle. Thanks to the efforts of activists from the Mexican Institute for Human Rights and Democracy, National Civilian Observatory Against the Genocide of Women, and the One Justice Center, a decree prohibiting femicide was passed in Mexico City. The Yang case was one of several crimes that prompted authorities to make this decision. Yang's death was also reclassified as a femicide and transferred to the Mexico City court 7 years after the tragedy. In May 2021, a criminal case was opened against Jorge, and on May 6 of the same year, a judge ordered his arrest for Yang's murder. However, Jorge's lawyers exploited every loophole to delay the investigation and sentencing. The fight for justice was not in vain. 9 years after Yang's death, in November 2023, Jorge Humberto Martinez Cortez, 45 years old, also known as El Motovas, was convicted and sentenced to 52 years and 6 months in prison for taking Yang's life. Although the Yang family achieved justice, the Campira family still had a long way to go. The trial was scheduled to begin in April 2022. At the detention center where Jorge was being held, activists were determined that this time the criminal would not shirk responsibility. However, Jorge's lawyers once again requested to postpone the scheduled hearing. On January 29, 2024, more than 50 witnesses were scheduled to be invited to the hearing. As of now, there is no information about this in the family media. While nothing can bring Campira back, her loved ones crave justice to prevail, ensuring that her death will not go unpunished.